something like that, yeah. We have Lisa joining us by phone. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jean Marie, and everyone else.
So we're gonna, every time we vote this evening, we're gonna have to go by roll because Lisa's joining us electronically. We have some visitors this evening that we want to acknowledge, and because they're here to discuss negotiations, Polly and Rick are here from the UUSD board, Lisa, and so we're gonna move, I'd like a motion to move into executive session so that we can discuss negotiations.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
By roll, Emily.
Aye.
Chelsea.
Aye.
And this is like the name game for me.
Leanne.
Leanne, I didn't see you sneak in, thank you. Aye for me, and did they get to? No, okay. Okay, the ayes have it. Catherine, can you sit over here? Made a motion to come out of executive session, and there were no motions that happened in executive session. So, shall we move forward in the order that, can we move forward without Lenny? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me put my glasses on. Okay, so our consent agenda. Our next item is our previous minutes. Anybody have thoughts on the previous minutes? Adjustments, error, correction?
No.
Anybody want to make a motion about the previous minutes?
I'll make that motion to accept the previous minutes.
All in favor signify by saying your name and aye.
Catherine Barnard, aye.
Erin Polkett, aye.
Mary Niles, aye.
Jean Marie Clark, aye.
Emily Norris, aye. Chelsea Van School, aye. Leanne Trombley, aye.
Thank you. See,
That was
passed
smart.
off the
I
name
like
game
that.
right there.
Yeah.
Phew.
Good strategy.
Okay, now policies, shall we take them in two steps here? We have a variety for the second reading. Any comments, questions, or concerns about those? Are you in the policies committee now?
I'm not.
No, okay. Oh, that's Lisa.
Catherine and Lisa.
Oh, Catherine is too, okay. Any questions, comments, concerns on the first half?
The only question I had is that it looked to me that there were some, on the first attachment of policies, beginning D7 with professional learning, that some of these were already approved. Like in the tent of where they were some down here, I thought some had already been approved.
So
and I was
they
confused as
had,
to why
because-
they're on here.
So they had from both boards, because when you merged, you adopted policies, but now they're in their regular review cycle. So,
Okay.
so the regular review cycle comes through policy. When you adopted like a slew of them at once, and they all
Gotcha.
come through review.
Okay. And then my only other question was, I had a question about E1, the pets.
That's in the first reading,
Oh,
we're not there
okay.
yet. A motion on the policies for second reading?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Erin. All in favor signify by saying your name and aye.
Catherine, aye.
Erin, aye.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, aye. Chelsea, aye. Leanne, aye.
Okay. The policies for first reading, Mary?
I just had a quick question about the pets, and I didn't see anything in the 4 kind of sub-points here about kids with allergies and how to manage that, if there's pet dander getting in classrooms, or can a child, would a parent maybe say, I don't want my kid to be around them? Like, do we make any provisions for?
Well, it's the prior permission
For
from the
that.
principal, so I would think the principal would say there's a kid with a
Yeah,
We check.
you check, okay.
Yeah, we pull something out to, like we have the therapy dog. So
Right.
before we even started that, we started with just the first grade and asked who wanted to do it, and then we just put out a letter to parents. And just saying, this is gonna happen, please let us know if your
Okay.
child has any allergies.
Yeah,
So that reverse permissions looked at.
okay.
Mhm.
So that was my only question, was about kids with allergies.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns on this stack of policies for first reading? Okay, Who wants to make a motion about this snack?
I can do that again. I make a motion.
Thank you, Erin. Let's start with Leanne, your favor.
Leanne, I. Chelsea, I. Emily, I.
Jean Marie, aye.
Mary, aye.
Erin, I. Catherine, I.
Oh God, Lisa, I'm not even asking you to vote. Geez, somebody keep me on. Lisa, what's your
Aye.
favorite?
Aye.
Thank you, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
We need to get you on the big screen so I really feel like you're here. Then I promise to not forget you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. I call into meetings a lot. I know how crappy it feels. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Any updates to our agenda? Anybody? I know we want to get some of our principals in and out of here. Anybody
I'm
else?
hoping
Anything
to
else?
just, I have just some things I'm gonna move to the end. The order from mine
Okay.
is a little bit changed, that's it.
And we have no visitors this evening. So we'll do the school spotlight now? You want, okay. We'll start with Rhoda,
All right,
okay?
so I'm going to talk a little bit about coaching, and I'm going to apologize first because I've been a little sick today, so see how well I do.
Thanks for grinding through with us.
So we have in Bakersfield 2 academic full-time coaches, one with a math focus and one with a literacy focus, and a restorative practices coach 2 days a week. She's paid for out of the restorative practices grant that we got last year. The 2 academic coaches are in our local budget. And we wanted to make sure this year that we were really using them to their fullest capacity since we have a lot of time with them. They're there all the time. So we worked really hard at the beginning of the year to put together a schedule in which they were meeting with every single teacher at least once a week, grades K through 5. And then in the middle school, the literacy coach meets once a week with the ELA teacher and with our science social studies teacher. And then the math coach meets with our math teacher once a week. So that's been going really well this year. They've had a lot of face-to-face time and designated intentional time to dig into their curriculum and talk about shifts in practice. We also built into our schedule this year time that was designated for team PLC time, and the coaches are running those team PLCs, and those are once a month. No, those are once a week as well. And that's like a K to 3, or K to 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the middle school PLCs. And then they are able to take some of the stuff that they're working on in those PLCs and go to a bigger PLC once a month where it's the whole elementary side and then the whole middle school side. And that time is an after-school staff meeting time. So we've really been trying to be intentional about the work that they're doing around both math practices. They've been focusing a lot on math menus and the Bridges program, and focusing a lot in the ELA around the Lucy Calkins units, and also UDL work. So, that's been really good intentional time, and it helps us with our MTSS structure in that they're really helping those teachers differentiate their instruction to meet as many learners as they can in the Tier 1 class. Both of those coaches also meet with our interventionists once a week to help them think about what needs there are in the Tier 2 and how they might design lessons around Tier 2 instruction. So all of that said, there's been a lot of really great work this year. However, we also realized that we had some other needs in our building around behavior this year, and that some of our other partnering schools, Montgomery and Berkshire in particular, don't have the luxury of having all of that coaching. So we've been really trying to be intentional about looking at that model and thinking about what do we really need and how might we be able to share some of those resources. So I've been talking with the coaches quite a bit as of late about that idea of sharing and whether or not they would be open to doing some of that. I think that they are, and to some degree, and we've talked about what that might look like, and we don't know where that'll land right now, but we're just kind of trying to feel out a lot of different options that we could have. From having part-time math and part-time literacy coaches who would then go to other buildings, or having a coach that was also part-time intervention, and that might free up some other places where we could also then spend some time around the behavior pieces that we're seeing in our school. I've talked with NCSS and talked about a school-based behavior consultant that we might be able to bring in if we were able to save some dollars in other places. So that's kind of the thoughts that we had going on, and I just wanted to share that all with you. So there's been a lot of great things happening around coaching, but there are also some other needs that we are realizing might need to be addressed. It would be helpful if we shifted money in different areas.
This is like one of the examples of the principals looking at all of our students as being all of our students, and this isn't typical for principals to be looking out and saying, okay, I have this and I need something else, and I know I've got a couple partners that don't have any of it. So it is, I know the thought behind it is challenging, but it's certainly appreciated, and I think that it definitely, you're focusing on the need and some of the equity that we've been working on, and these 4 principals have been working really well together, defining like what's our new reality and how do we work in a merged district compared to our typical single district. Nice job, kudos to all of you.
Thank you. Questions for Rhoda? Okay.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Rhoda, you submitted your principal's report. Could I just ask if anybody has any questions about her principal report? Would it be okay to do that now? She's very sick and she's been very patient and waiting. So I'm wondering if we could cut her loose before Lenny starts his spotlight.
I have one question that's not necessarily regarding your report, but I was asked as a parent recently about, I have my kids are athletes.
Yep.
So it was about the athlete attendance policy, and so I said, oh, don't worry, I'm sure you know all about this. I said, don't worry, like our principals are working on a joint handbook so that the policies will be more aligned. We talked about that, I just want to make sure that like it's gonna happen.
We talked about working to align them.
Yeah.
I don't know that we talked about coming up with one joint
Right.
handbook, because I think that there's still some things that are different.
Unique to the
And
schools'
I think that we
buildings.
want that, like there's
Right.
still some autonomy.
Right.
What we talked about was, we have it, I think, did I put it in March leadership? Do you guys remember? I have time scheduled in the next couple of months for them to have work time together to bring their handbooks
Okay,
and
cool.
unpack them.
I
with
just
one
want to
another.
make sure that
Yeah.
it hadn't fallen off the
No,
radar.
it's
I
there.
think that we're, especially because we are now all in this pool together, that, you know, we have to be thinking in that direction. I mean, you guys are already thinking that way. So I just wanted to make sure that that didn't fall off the radar, because as you all know, like, you know, you put all 4th grade teachers together for different learning opportunities, and so they all talk about, well, this is what we do in my school, and the
Right.
same thing with all those other folks. So they're talking more now than ever before, and I think it's important to try to work to align some of those things, so.
And I am aware of some issues around that
Yeah,
attendance piece.
yeah,
But
yeah,
we'll work toward making it better.
yeah.
Thank you.
Feel better? Go home.
Yeah, thank you, Rhoda.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, you and your germs can go home.
Oh, you just don't want to sand you.
So shall we open the floor for questions to any of our other principals? That's how we do this now, right?
Well, you have to go back to Lenny's spotlight statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why Lenny was giving me the hairy eyeball. Yeah.
Peace out, Girl Scout. So, what I'm thinking of doing is not really call it a narrative, but kind of tell those of you who haven't been working with the school as long as like Leanne has and Lisa has, to sort of give you a little bit of a story or background as far as like the things we've been doing the last few years to kind of get the school to where we are. I figured that'll help get our bearings when it comes to budget conversations and other next step conversations. So the three things that we've been working really hard on or hard at in Berkshire is how can we do a better job addressing and supporting emotional and behavioral needs. And then I'm going to want to talk about what we've been doing to try and support and address academic needs, and then what we've been doing to, I don't have a term for it, but it's kind of a catch-all around like how have we been mindful of the lifestyle, wellness, and connectedness needs of our students. So bigger picture saying like we've really been working hard on addressing the whole child. Those are kind of the three different threads I've been kind of thinking and leading us as far as what kind of changes or innovations can we do at our school that can hit one of those three things, impacting, improving children's lifestyle, wellness, and sense of connectedness, addressing those academic needs, and social emotional needs. So some of the things we've done so far to address the emotional and behavioral needs, we have a school-based behavior consultant. That was, I'm not sure how many years did you have them before I came on?
It was Enosburg and Berkshire, we were the two pilot programs. And CSS, I would say probably 3 years before.
Before me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
total
how-
guess.
How long have you been in the role, Lenny?
So this is my third year.
Third year, okay.
So maybe 6 years total. We had one person for about 2 years, and then the current person's been there for the 3 years I've been there. So some of the value of that school-based behavior consultant is it's a high-skilled consultant who comes from the local mental health service agency, which for us is NCSS. They have a lot of knowledge, and they might be BCBA certified. Ours is also doing master's programming. They just come with a lot of knowledge about how to respond to challenging behaviors. But the value we get is, one, that individual is a case manager building and supporting behavior plans for around 10 kids, but then also helps increase staff capacity because they're available to help staff respond to, manage, and mitigate behavior by giving consultations. Some of that we set up some structured meeting times wherein they bring, the teachers will bring a challenging kiddo or a challenging cohort and they problem solve, and also just kind of ad hoc in the hallway check-ins like, hey, how's this going? Hey, I've had this happen, how can we manage it? And we've continued, that's been an incredibly valuable thing. That's kind of why Road has been hearing a lot of us talk about how valuable it is to have that kind of person in our building, and it really impacts everyone and everything. And all the kids, it's interesting, all the kids in the school know her. So it's not like she just has her 10 little kids that, well, she definitely very much is very protective and careful of those kids. She's very available for everybody, and it's great to have that capacity. And I get to consult with her as well, and I've grown a lot in my capacity to respond and support to students as well. So something we found out about during that time, during my first year there, I was like starting to notice like the school collectively is really coming around to have a really good way of managing and responding to students. Doesn't necessarily we were curing everything, but I was like, I felt like our system was good, but what we were noticing was when we put together these different behavior plans, we were noticing we were only sort of addressing one piece of the puzzle. The behavior plan was really great about responding to the behavior and maybe reinforcing so the kid might make better choices, but we didn't really have any strong structures about how to really, not fix is the wrong word, but like recognizing there's something deeper undergoing for many of those kids around why they're not making those good choices. So aside from just putting together a good plan in place that might actually fix the need, there was a deeper need that we weren't addressing. And so we talked with NCSS about like, we're all kind of seeing this, like they need more help, and our guidance counselor is great, but they can only meet so many people, and their skill sets are not always directly aligned with some of the needs of our kids. So we, starting last fall, we picked up a school-based clinician. And there were kind of a couple fold decisions around that. Was one, there are definitely families who are open to getting services for their children, but we all know like it's really hard to get, and especially out here, a lot of that might be going all the way to St. Albans. So there was an opportunity and a need but we couldn't meet that need because there wasn't somebody available. So I recognize that we need to get somebody in the building that would just be available to provide some services, and that they can now pick up a caseload around 20 kids. And there's kind of twofold benefits that I'm seeing in the schools. One, giving that extra support for children with that need. We already have the behavior plan stuff, our teachers are getting skillful about crafting behavior plans, responding, and now we have this other really skilled staff that can also help children kind of develop internal skills. But the other piece is the school-based clinician is also highly valuable around building our own staff collective capacity. So they get to sit on meetings and give some feedback to staff or input and guidance around like, what could you do next to respond to that kid, or if that kid's struggling this way, here's what you could do as well. And not just their caseload kids, but they can give some consultation on kids in general. And she also, which I'll get to the next one, she also is sort of being a, what's what I'm looking for? Oh my God, it just slipped my mind. It's getting late in the day. She's helping guide my social emotional learning interventionist in programming her social emotional instruction. And I'll get to that piece in a second. So that's another value we've been getting that's really helping our collective capacity to respond to and support kids.
They're both school employees?
They're contracted with NCSS.
Okay, both of those are? And are they full-time, like, are they there full-time?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Pretty much, except for the couple hours when they do some NCSS collaboration time. But yeah, they're 5 days a week.
Gotcha.
From the start of the day to the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to say? Okay. So then the next piece, and it kind of, at the same time that we worked on getting the school-based clinician, we recognize like that they're kind of like the higher need kids that they'll be meeting with. But what about if we could also start putting in we have academic interventions. We've been doing that for a few years, and a lot of schools have been doing that, where we recognize a kid's lacking in skills or not progressing or missing a skill. We've got this skilled teacher that can provide really skilled instruction on that. We didn't have that. We recognize we probably need to do the same thing for behavior and social emotional skills. We recognize we're asking these kids to make better choices, but when are we ever giving really good, explicit, targeted instruction, and recognizing some of our kids might need it far more frequently than others because they might not have gotten it as often outside of school in previous years. So we created a SEL interventionist position, and we took what was our previous planning room coordinator who had a lot of background training and had been doing some of this social emotional teaching when she was processing with students in the planning room, and we recognized she had a lot of skill already. Let's create this position for a social emotional interventionist, and we started it last year, and we're now in year 2 of that, and that's been successful as well. So then another thing that we've been doing is from NCSS as well, we have and I think other schools have the same thing, we call them the CAP program and the school-based autism program. So those are another really valuable programs that we have, where we have one-to-one skilled mental health service employees who provide support for children. We're recently talking with NCSS about how we could start collecting some of the behavioral data from that, because what they pointed out is if I was to come to you right now and present you some of our universal behavior data, like the number of referrals that students have been earning because of their choices, we're realizing that information is actually somewhat depressed, I guess is one word to use it, because the people who are on those one-to-ones are not always writing in major referrals for that behavior, because they're collecting information for sure and they have plenty of data, but what they're not doing is it's not getting into our major referral system because it's collecting this different system. So we were recognizing, well, how would I then communicate to the board or many other outside agency all this value I am getting from these one-to-ones if we don't really have a place to show it? So we've been having some conversations with NCSS about how we want to start making sure that data communicates with our universal data as well. So we had some meetings, and at some point we'll probably be available to present that data to you. Like, here's our universal, and here's what it would look like if we didn't have these one-to-one services working with those kiddos as well. So I could keep going on and on. I'm wondering how long I want to talk for, because there's a lot of other things I could cover. We're working on restorative practices. I think this is one that I definitely want to talk to for a little bit. And we're starting with building the capacity in our teachers to do circles, and then it's eventually going to go into how do we actually do restorative justice, restorative practices in our school. And the real goal here is how to build our staff's capacity to help our children feel more connected. There's a lot of research around the sense of this concept of like connectedness, how when children feel really connected to each other, they're far less likely to do harmful things to each other. When they feel connected to the school, they're far less likely to make harmful or negative decisions to others and themselves. So it's working about how can we build that sense of connectedness and community in our school. And it's been pretty interesting so far with it. Teachers are kind of uncomfortable. They're like, it's the one faculty meeting I'm least comfortable doing because we got to kind of talk about feelings. But at the same time, every time they get done, they're like, you know, Lenny, at first I didn't want to do this, but at the end it felt really, really good. And it's kind of, then I'm like, well, now think about that when we start doing it with our kids, because they're going to kind of have those same kind of barriers, and how we're going to overcome those barriers. Let's see. I think I'm going to cut it off there because I'm probably getting another chance to talk more, but the other two themes I want to let you guys know about is, as much as we're spending time on the emotional behavioral needs, we're also still working hard on addressing the academic needs, and particularly the one conversation is how can we get ahead of it with better first instruction, which is, I think, where we're leaning to now as a system is we really need that coaching piece. I can do so much as a principal, but I'm also pulled in a lot of different places. And also there's sometimes when I'm coaching as an administrator, there's, as much as I'm like here to help you, it's like you're also the evaluator. It's hard to have that just pure coaching thing come in. So we believe that if we can improve our first instruction with some coaching, we're gonna have improved proficiency for our kids. And then the other side is we have academic interventionists. Right now we have, it's not exactly these numbers, but we kind of have a preschool through third grade math, a third through fifth grade math, and then a sixth, seventh, and eighth grade math interventionist, and then the same thing from ELA. And I've been working on that. Lynn was working on it before, and then I've kind of added 2 over the last couple of years, getting to that kind of level of support. And we used to have just 1.5-ish math interventionists and 1.5 ELA interventionists, and the challenge was we were getting pretty good at identifying the needs of kids, and we were getting pretty good at identifying what they needed to move forward, but we didn't have the staff to do that. And we've done a really good job with our schedules of having that time to provide the instruction, but we didn't have enough adults. So from like the DMG report and then all the push for having multi-tiered systems of support to help kids continue to grow and succeed, I've been working hard on adding in those interventionist positions over the years. So that's where we're at currently. And then the last thing we've been working hard is that sense of connectedness, which goes back to sort of practices and wellness. And we were able to get to a full-time PE teacher, so giving kids a much more in-depth experience and more opportunities to get that physical education and learning. We've partnered with Rise VT to help, that's helping teachers create more energy and activity in their classrooms, but also there's some embedded education around health and wellness for our students. We're also working, we got the Farm to School grant, and that's been really exciting because that's going to be working hard at developing kids' understanding and affinity for healthy lifestyles and healthy food choices and how to get food and get part of that, helping, without getting on my soapbox too much, recognizing that maybe a lot of us in this world are disconnected from our food systems compared to what we were 150 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So kind of not to judge people for how they go about getting their food, because it's not about that, but it's about helping them get an understanding and ownership and connectedness to it. And then what we really want to do, because of where we live, is also reconnect to our community. We're a rural farming community, and many of our students are not really connected to it. Some are deeply, but some are not. So we want to start trying to bring back that connectedness. Some really cool ideas we haven't gone very far with them. We did a little bit of a maple sugaring project last year, and we have some really grand ideas about how we could do that more. We found out, so we did we tapped like 30 trees or something like that, 3rd and 4th grade, and we did a maple sugaring project, and they did some interconnected academic learning in ELA and social studies in those grades, and we're really hoping to blow it up over time. But we found out our sugar content was like 5 times better than anybody else's in the region.
Oh.
So we're like, well, that's it. So that's kind of cool, but we have a lot more trees than the ones we tap. But we're gonna slowly build success upon success. But we would love to get to the point where we really have a full-on sugaring operation that the children are owning and leading, all the different interdisciplinary skills and transferable skills that can be built out of all of that. We also have some grand visions of doing an apple orchard project similar to the maple sugaring project that happens in the spring. This would be more of a fall project that brings in the community. And then we have our school garden project, which will help kids get some ownership around the whole husbandry, cultivation of food piece, and then bring that into our lunch, breakfast, and snack programs as well. And then I think I'll stop there.
I was just gonna say.
For the love of God,
Enough, Lenny.
wrap it up.
The one thing I wanted to say is, and like, you know, Lisa and Leanne and some of you ladies that have been on the board for a long time, I think that the thing that we have to recognize and help sort of spread the word to all of our communities is the longer I'm on the board, the more I realize that there's so much more than basic academic stuff that happens inside a school building. Like we are, tasking our teachers and our school administrators with the social, emotional, like there's just so much. And I think part of that is we as as the US are learning that there is so much more behind the behaviors and how to, help them learn. It's just, so, when we move forward with our budgets and it's like my son who was in 8th grade is like, well, I don't know what that lady does. She has a fake job. He always goes, oh, she's got the fake job, right? Because she's not standing in front of him in the classroom all day, right? So, but there is so much value, and that's just a part of what our schools do now is far beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So it's just, I think it's our job as school board members to try to, educate the general public about that and understand that we're trying to balance our budget as well as provide all these things for our students. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Any questions for Lenny? Okay. Okay, so now the principal's reports. Does anyone have questions, concerns about those? It's like the quietest group tonight. Okay. Shall we move to Morgan then? You're the next up.
So in my report, talked about the audit, the financial updates for this year, and that went out by email, and then a little bit on the Sheldon building project. No real changes to what I sent out there. Again, on the building project, we're hoping to have bid documents out before your next meeting. And then bids probably due 30-ish days after that. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Coming around, and Lisa, you should have this by email. The one-page document is what we're going to look at first.
Thank you.
This is the recap of the budget as it's currently built. And I think this is probably your first look at revenues and tax rate impact. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through the front of this page first, because I know it's going to be new to some of you. The FY21 column, the proposed column is highlighted, and that's the one that you guys will hopefully make a motion on tonight, setting that. That first section of 5 lines are your revenues that come from somewhere other than the property tax. So when the state is setting up property tax for NMV, it's going to look at the expenses that you approve. It's going to back out the revenues that we think we can count on here locally and from the state. And anything that's left over is what drives your property tax rate. So I've plugged in anticipated local revenue. The big change is on the other revenue line, and that amount in both the FY20 column and then the FY21 column is the use of your fund balance. So in FY21, that's all the money that was left over at the end of FY19. And in the FY20 column, that was all the money that was left over at the end of FY18. So it's not really a loss of revenue, it just means that in FY19 you guys spent closer to your budget than you did in FY18. But unfortunately it does negatively impact the tax rate. I also want to call your attention on state revenue. If you look in the FY20 column, that $495,000 figure is highlighted, but it's kind of lost in the black and white. This is the number that we presented to voters, and this is the number that the voters voted on. And what that includes is state special ed reimbursement and the small schools grant for Montgomery. After they voted, but before I submitted the budget to the state, thanks primarily to Lynn's lobbying, Bakersfield was able to keep their small schools grant. So that number went up to just over $602,000. And so the column that you're looking at in FY20 approved here, these are the same numbers that we gave to the voters to vote on last year. These are different from the numbers that they're going to see on their tax bills if they go back and look at them. For those of you who've been around for a while, when we warn a budget, we have to warn a phrase that says, we're planning on spending this much per pupil, and it's X% higher or lower than the previous year. That X% higher or lower from the previous year is going to be based on the number that they're actually seeing on their tax rate. So you guys get to give me some guidance on whether you want to show to the voters in this FY20 column what they saw last year when they went to the ballots or what they're going to see on their tax rate. And I can argue it either way depending on which way you want to go. And we don't have to have that discussion right now, I just want to plant that seed, but when we talk about any changes from previous year, the document that you have in front of you is going to be changes from what we warned, as opposed to what people are seeing on their tax bills, their tax bill number being a little bit lower because of that small schools grant.
Morgan, I just have a kind of super micro question.
Yep.
Did this budget on the, incorporate an additional math or a math interventionist for Montgomery? Does it factor in?
So we'll get to that in the expense part. That's
Okay.
coming up in the thicker packet.
Okay.
So walking you through the projected tax rate section, the 16 million figure is what we currently have budgeted for expenditures. We back out the local and grant revenue listed above, and that gets you ed spending of $15,700,000. That's the first figure that sets your tax rate, and that's the figure that you guys control, that education spending. The next line is the equalized pupils. This number is not final yet, but I think it's pretty close. I don't anticipate it's going to change more than maybe a kid. And you guys are basically holding steady from the previous year in terms of equalized pupils. You divide ed spending by equalized pupils and you get your per pupil ed spending, and that's the number that would go on the warning that you guys will hopefully sign tonight.
Morgan, the equalized pupils includes also all our high schoolers?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
But then
That includes everybody
the
that
per pupil
we're paying for.
educational spending, we often end up spending higher than that 14,825 for our high schoolers.
Correct. Yeah, because that 14 is an average of all your students.
Yeah, okay.
According to the budget. So that equalized pupil number is the second of the four factors. That's one that we don't have any control over, and this is probably as final as it's going to get before you have to warn. The dollar yield is a figure that is ultimately set by the legislature. The number that we are using here, 10,883, is the number that was proposed by the tax commissioner. It's likely to change. I can't predict whether it's going to go up or down. And you won't have any real bankable information on what that number is until probably late May. So we'll move forward with that. The dollar yield is going up, which helps drive down your tax rate. So it's about a 2% increase over the previous year. So that's the kind of one point of good news in this process.
Chelsea's got a little new board member look going on down there.
Yes.
Do you
Sure
have
do.
questions?
Just say that last part one more time. The dollar yield goes up, the actual tax rate goes down.
Correct. So the dollar yield is how much money the state is giving you for every dollar on your tax rate. So that number's gone up 2%, which means that if all things were being equal and your tax rate was around $1, your tax rate would go down 2%. So that gets you an equalized residential school tax rate. The tax rate for, it's going to be applied to homesteads for the district as a whole of $1.3622. So if you compare that to the $1.3352, it's up about 2%. And that's primarily a factor of expenses going up, drives that up. You have a little bit less revenue, which drives that up. Your equalized pupils are flat, so that has made no change. And then your dollar yield going up drives the tax rate down a little bit. 2.7 cents increase and 2% increase. So that figure gets tweaked by the CLA for each of the towns to get your individual tax rates that you're all going to see on your bills. CLA went down fairly significantly for Bakersfield and for Sheldon, a little bit less so for Berkshire, and it was essentially flat for Montgomery. So a falling CLA is going to increase your tax rate. As was pointed out in the board meeting last night, where they have one town with a rising CLA, they're going to see a falling tax rate. That's the only good news that comes from a rising CLA. Falling CLA basically means that your property values are going up, and the state is adjusting your grand list accordingly. But that's cold comfort when your tax bills are going out. So that's how we get to the tax rate. The language below on that front page is sort of how I explained it each year, so you can take that home. I have to tweak it because I haven't really changed it at all from last year. If you flip over to page 2, this is the real 10,000 foot view of the budget.
Morgan, can I interject just one more second? How do we not get in a pinch with our high schoolers if we have an equalized per pupil spending that's kind of that average, but is well below what we're paying out for a number of our high school tuition schools?
So if you were a sending district, then your per pupil spending number would be closer to $16,000.
Right.
Because you only have high school kids. Your elementary school kids cost you a lot less than $14,000 per kid.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yeah. And this is really, it's just kind of a mathematical formula to, you're going to get the money that you tell the state you need to support this budget. This is just how they're backing into a tax rate. So those equalized pupil figures, they're going to count high school kids more, they're going to count kids who are on IEPs more, they're going to count kids who ELL needs more, young kids less. So.
And, well, when we get into the more micro stuff, I can ask another high school tuition question.
Okay, we're getting close. So the second page is the broad view of your expenses. The pre-K is first, because we have to separate that out for the state. And then K-12 is second, and we pull special ed out from regular ed. In terms of changes from your previous budget, I added the facilities manager position, which we did not have in there. I brought some of your utilities costs down, looking at what you had spent last year versus what we had budgeted this year, and where I felt confident doing that, I tried to cut some costs down. I made some updates to your high school tuition amounts. Nobody has announced a tuition rate yet, so I'm kind of guessing at where Maple Run's going to come in and where Amesbury Richard's going to come in. And then we would know the statewide average, which is what you pay your private schools. until later on in the game.
What is co-curricular?
So that would be, it would be stuff that happens outside of the school day that's not sports. So that would be clubs. We pull the after-school out separately, I believe. No, that would include your after-school program as well. And I want to talk about tuition before we lose it. I want to go over again how I'm counting your kids and give you sort of an opportunity where I think we can maybe cut some of the budget if you feel comfortable doing so. What I did was I took the tuition bills for your 9th graders, 10th graders, and 11th graders, assume they're all coming back at the same school, and I'm making a guess at what those schools' tuition rates are going to be next year. I took your 8th graders that are in your 4 buildings, and I said roughly 3/4 of them are going to go to Enosburg-Richford, 1/4 of them are going to go to Maple Run. That would be enough if some of them go to private school. It would not be enough if some of them go to Chittenden County schools. But I think that it's going to wash out with those.
I guess, what is the typical percentage of kids that go to schools other than like the 3 big ones? Really small? Basically, you're saying
It's
it's
pretty
really
small,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really primarily Maple Run and Enosburg.
Yeah.
That's where you get most of your kids going. So what I didn't do is I didn't look at the 11th graders and say, I think 2 of these kids are going to drop out over the summer and 2 of them are going to go to early college. In both of those cases, you wouldn't have to pay tuition for them. The other thing I didn't do was I didn't look at your 10th graders and say, of these 95 kids in 10th grade, I think 20 of them are going to go to the tech center, and then you wouldn't have to pay them through tuition. So I've also not built in any buffers for kids moving in. Not built any buffers for kids moving out. The hope is now with 4 towns, those 2 numbers will wash out, but you know, in any single given year, that doesn't always work out.
So this is a new, what you're saying is this is not the normal way that you would calculate this, the tuition.
In the past, we've gone through and, I mean, we've done something similar. We've tried to, in the 3 towns that have always been in Franklin Northeast, we kind of go through the student list and say, yeah, this kid's definitely going to Stansted, this kid's going to Enosburg, this kid's going to Maple Run.
Right.
I don't know that that was any more accurate than looking at an average.
Yeah.
But we've never really tried to predict what kids are going to be going to the tech center. But I think that's an area where if we're not liking where this budget is, you know, I could comfortably say we can back out whatever it is, 4 kids and save you 70,000, or it's going to be 10 kids and save you a lot more, or pull out a specific dollar amount. So you had a tuition question.
Who's funding the tech center that is not us?
So we're funding it, but what happens is we're funding the tech center based on the last 6 semester average. So if a kid goes to a tech center next year, you're not paying high school tuition, and then over the next 3 years, you're paying 1/3 of them to the tech center. So the kids that you're actually paying, the tech center bills that you're paying, which are also incorporated in here, are really just an average over the last 6 semesters.
No buffer? You're not building in a buffer at all for new families?
So I think the buffer is, I'm not taking anything out for dropouts or early
Yeah.
college or the tech center.
Okay.
But yeah,
We usually, and we did it a few years ago at Berkshire, we kind of looked at the graduating classes in the next couple of years and compared them to we had a couple of bubble classes, and we proactively baked some of those tuition bills in.
I think
and
you've done
Berkshire
that,
had the
right?
history of
Yeah.
having 10 kids show up some summer
Yeah.
that were not budgeted, so that.
Also,
they
yes.
Also, I think we're a little more gun shy on that. Whereas Bakersfield and Montgomery, you know, they'd have 2 or 3 and it would feel like a big impact, but it was, you know, they were never at a point where they were freezing budgets in September. And I don't know historically what it's been like in Sheldon in terms of, yeah.
Not.
Is there, this may not make sense at all, but is there any, have you ever thought about, like, asking the high schools, those sophomores, what the numbers are that they could foresee going to the tech center? I don't know if it would help at all to help plan some budgets. Because, I mean, it just seems that if a kid knows, they know freshman year pretty much, they're heading that way. And definitely by sophomore year, they're like, okay, this is where I'm heading. Even if we had rough numbers, do you think it would, is it enough to help?
I don't know if that's any more accurate than the rough number of knowing that, you know, in the past couple of years, it's been this percent of kids
Okay.
going.
I think that Mary's question, what I heard in there is that worry of if no buffer, like, I've lived through many years of having to freeze teachers' budgets, and that's a hard place to be. So we don't embed a buffer, but we also aren't, if you want us to get super accurate on that tech center, we could reduce it, that eliminates any buffer that might naturally exist.
So the other moving factor on tuition, and this is going to be an issue pretty soon, which I'll bring to you for this year, is that the high schools are guessing at what their tuition rate is going to be, and they put it out, and then we pay it, and then there's a true-up process the next year when the state says, yeah, this is actually the tuition rate you should have charged. I know we haven't seen final numbers for last year, but the draft numbers that I've seen so far, I think that Enosburg is going to be sending out some pretty hefty bills to you guys and to Fairfield, because their allowable tuition rate's coming in a lot higher. You guys, as a board, when you get that bill, you have the ability to say, oh, we've got the money in our budget to pay it this year, we're going to pay it this year. And you can say, we don't have the money in our budget, we're going to pay it next year. In theory, if the state was keeping to their deadlines, you would know what that bill is by now, and you could build it into the budget. The state's behind for the second year in a row, so we don't know that. But part of the buffer that you're talking about is if those kids don't come, but we do get that bill, we get it off the books that year. And so this year, when I look at the tuition bills that we've gotten versus the tuition that we budgeted, we're down probably 150,000, 200,000. I think we're going to have bills coming to us that are going to eat that up, but it gives us the ability to get rid of that this year.
So is the number that we would see on our tax bills one of these numbers?
Yes, probably. So again, the yield number, the dollar yield is not set yet, and that's going to have a big impact. But if you look at that FY21 proposed column, and you look in those last 8 lines, I've broken it up what it would be for each town. That CLA number is set, that's not going to move.
So if you live in Montgomery, you would see the 1.3174
Correct.
times your assessed value, or however.
Your homestead value? Yeah. So I will send the detail around and we can get into this as deeply or as not deeply as you want.
Oh, I had one other comment on
Yep.
here. Excuse me, I still don't like what we've spent thus far. We have to have that on here?
We don't. The FY21 to date,
Yeah, the one to date.
we do not have to have that on there.
The
We
only
had a
reason why-
request from a taxpayer on the other side, wanted to see where that was.
Right.
And so we put it in there. I don't think it's super useful.
I just worry that it works against us. Like if we look at the first line of direct instruction, it appears we've only spent 65 grand so far. I just don't want somebody to say, well, we've spent 65 grand so far, why are you asking for 280, you know, that kind of math.
And we can explain it if
Yeah.
it gets asked at a public meeting. We can if they just look at that at home and say they're
Right.
Which
asking
the
for this huge increase.
majority of the people do.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know, do you guys like, I mean, I guess it can stay. You don't
It's-
care one way or the other,
I
I
don't care.
suppose, yeah? Anybody else have
So
a
you
concern
guys,
about that?
you guys can direct me on that.
It's not really helpful.
It doesn't seem helpful.
Yeah, they have no idea when bills come due, when what's,
Right.
paid when. It's,
Right.
I do believe it's misleading, to
I
be
fear
honest.
that it is just because of like that example. If you just
I
go
was
halfway,
slightly
you know.
misled by it myself. I was staring at
takes
it
a
like,
minute to-
oh.
Yeah.
So,
But if somebody was requesting it, they could request it and you could just print it? Or does it have to be printed for everybody, if somebody's requesting it?
I could print it for somebody to
Okay.
request it.
Public.
I mean, it's a helpful benchmark, and it's certainly helpful for kind of assessing how much we're spending by certain points of the year, but I think taken out of context, it could be
A little
misconstrued.
bit, do you think?
Yeah.
I do think it's easily explained though, because like you're saying, the timing of when things are paid,
Right.
you know.
So I think people kind of look at it and say, well, it's December, you should have spent half of it. We've paid the teachers for a third of the year.
Right.
We've maybe not even paid much of the assessment, depending on who's got the good or bad cash flow. So, but, yeah. Numbers are there, you guys can tell me what to do.
Do you guys want to make a decision about it now? I would like to vote in favor of removing it. Anybody feel the same? Chelsea, you
I do.
do?
Yeah, I do.
I
Leanne?
think it's just a direction.
Don't care one way or the other?
Nope.
Mary?
I'm not I'm fine either way.
Karen?
I'm okay with removing it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Lisa?
Lisa, how do you feel?
Either way is fine with me.
And while I've stopped Morgan, Lisa, do you have any questions so far on this?
No, thank you.
So, what I've done for you guys in the past is kind of give you a rough idea of what you need to do to move the tax rate a penny. And so this is to move that initial tax rate, the one before the CLA. A penny is worth, if we pick up just under 8 more equalized pupils, it drops by a penny. So that's small changes there, have a pretty big impact on the tax rate. If you want to, through your budget action, move this a penny, you've got to move about $115,000. So that's 115. So that's either cutting 115 for expenses, telling me that you think I'm wrong about revenue and that you're going to get a lot more, or some combination of those two. So in terms of the expense side, we went through this page by page last go-around. I've kind of tipped you to the tuition changes and some potential you have for making reductions there if you want. We're in a funny position because you guys are going before the supervisory union. So I've built the supervisory union assessments in there based on the budget that I think we're bringing to the supervisory union next week. The big question mark there is we've not seen any bankable numbers on special ed revenue. And so a big move there could dramatically increase or decrease your assessment. If you guys warn a budget tonight and the assessment moves significantly after the SU meeting, I think it's going to be kind of up to you guys to decide if you want to warn another meeting and adjust it either up or down, or if that change is small enough given the decisions you make around tuition kids, some of the other conversations on staffing we may have later. whether you feel like you can just go to the voters with that unchanged. It's all about comfort level.
Does this include any major staffing changes, at any of the schools? Can we cover that quickly?
It includes the tech person for Bakersfield and Montgomery, shared position there. I think that's the only real move other than the facilities director, which we
And where was
touched on.
that person added in?
That person is going to be towards the back,
Okay,
page 19.
19.
So it's a total of 100,000. That's a complete guess on my part based on what I saw other districts were paying their facilities
That kind of
managers.
person.
And that's in benefits and.
Benefits and salary. I'm not really building in anything else in terms of expenses, assuming that other than we'll have to find the computer, most of that is going to be part of the local building budgets.
Did we, I think it's on this agenda, the school nurse discussion?
So that is on this agenda, increasing a half-time nurse, and that's not in here.
We're gonna talk about that under my section.
Okay.
I know Rhoda's not here, but I was curious about, I know right now, the Bakersfield is doing half social studies, half science, because they couldn't find anybody last year. I'm just wondering, is that position being reopened up again for science, or is that continuing? I know the middle school is small, and it made sense at that point in time. I'm just wondering what that,
Yes.
and maybe
that's a
she
good
can't talk
question.
about
I
it.
believe-
That one, Lynn?
I believe it's continuing.
I have not heard that it's not.
There was a position at TBH that we were unable to fill that we took out of the budget.
Morgan, can we circle back to my question earlier about the math interventionist at Montgomery and whether that
Yep, so
is in this budget?
we do not have an interventionist in here. We've added back the math teacher, who hopefully we're gonna hire.
Added it back, you mean?
Well, because it's technically, you're kind of paying that through the SU. So it's not an employee, it's a contracted service for us. Because Lara is an SU employee.
Right.
So it's no change budget to budget
Right.
in terms of who's paying that bill right now, or how we're paying that
Yeah,
bill.
that's because
Okay.
she was.
Right,
she was
oh yeah, of course, but I know, separate from the math teacher conversation,
So
I
no.
was under the impression that we had kind of identified that that was lacking in a need in the school.
Where did we land on grants around that? That's what I was thinking in my mind.
Well, we can't go there because we had the math interventionist technically in the grant a couple of years ago, part-time. But that's one of the pieces we had to pull out because
We lost the money.
every year since I've been here, we've lost or more in the consolidated.
But you didn't replace it, didn't?
No, we didn't put it in the local budget.
So I don't, would that fall under supplant?
No, you could, if you had grant money, you could hire it.
But
Hire
our grant
from
money
there.
typically is just enough to cover Lara's interventionist position. We don't have any interventionist position in the budget.
I mean, I don't imagine that all the math interventionists in the other schools are paid through grant money.
Not all of them.
Sheldon. I feel like Bakersfield was at least for a while.
But not currently.
I don't
Yeah.
know, but I know that that's how they came on board.
And
I think that you
I'm
have-
paying for one right now via grant.
What's that?
I'm paying for a math interventionist via grant.
Through grant money?
Yes.
Yeah. And you have just one in the building or multiple?
One grant funded, one local
Okay,
math interventionist.
okay.
So were you asking if the math interventionist position could go back into the consolidated February.
Lynn was asking about if it would be supplanting to put them back in, and it wouldn't be,
It
because we
wouldn't be,
don't.
but the funding
Because
that
it's
we
not in the
have is
budget.
barely enough to cover Lara.
Right.
So I can't imagine we would then
Right.
have enough funding to add math interventionists in that funding. We're always kind of, every year we've had to bump a person in because it
Right.
was all people who were paid through the grant. And I don't like attaching human beings to the grant anymore because
Right.
I
it's so
think-
vulnerable.
I think this budget was basically showing like, if we carried over everything we currently had, it wasn't, this budget doesn't reflect any like new additions outside of the operations person.
You could certainly make those decisions, and you could say, bring this back with these things
Yeah.
embedded.
I mean, I feel pretty strongly that I've heard from Sandy, and I see on the ground kind of real bare bones staff with which we're kind of working, I mean, accomplishing great things in our building, but that is a need that we would really, our children would really benefit from having a math interventionist, at least at .5.
Well, and, with everything that we've been learning through the DMG and, with MTSS and having our experts work with our students, our most needy students, and, been trying to, piece paras in to do some math intervention, and the paras aren't the ones that are the experts in the area, so I really feel like that's been an area we've been lacking for a long time.
I think that we could embed that in we have had math positions open for over a year, and we've had math intervention that we've been looking for, and we have had almost 0 candidates.
Oh, I know.
So that's one of the reasons why it hasn't felt super urgent, because the job market is really there, that there are a lot of people, we've tried to look for teachers and get them in and say, okay, well, how about not like classroom teaching, but how about being a math interventionist? And, we've tried to be creative in how to get it. I mean, we could put it in there. I'm not sure you're gonna find somebody to fill it. That's,
Well,
Lenny?
I've been working for a year to try to find a math teacher,
Right.
and I think
I
I'm
was
pretty
just gonna
close.
ask, so is that still, the
We
search is still
interviewed-
on?
I started the search early this year, and we did interview on Monday.
Lenny,
And
who's your locally paid interventionist?
Across all the math and ELA, what we're talking
Either
about.
one, yeah.
So Holly is math interventionist.
Uh-huh.
Gregoire is Trisha McFadden. I believe Jenny Brown she might be Grant, I think she might be SU, I think is how she was getting paid. And then the other, getting late in the day, Holly, so Mark Van Buren is Grant, Holly is ELA, Holly is local, Trisha's local, and Jenny, I believe, is either local or SU.
That's all I need.
Well, I understand that kind of it's one thing to budget for it, and it's another thing to find the person to fill the position. But I would like to budget for it in the anticipation that we put out feelers and we'll find a person to fill a needed position in the school. I mean,
if it's a teaching position, I don't know if there's even a staff member that might bump into that position and, find someone to fill a teaching position. If we actually have that available, it's just not something we've ever had.
That's what's happened in our building.
Yeah, I'd rather have a
The-
teacher.
The people in both intervention positions were classroom teachers in Sheldon.
And that makes sense to me because they have the knowledge and the background of the math.
And then you backfill their positions with
Yeah.
new teachers.
Yeah,
Easier to
because
find.
it is not hard to fill an elementary school teaching position.
So that's my thought on that. as
Lots
That's
well.
also really good for
Candidates
staff
usually.
retention.
Yep.
Pushing, giving people a
Someone
way to
might
grow.
like a change.
Right.
that
So
seems
ba-
like a
that
good
was
strategy.
Based
my
on
pocket.
what Lenny's got in his
We
building,
need it.
you could add if you want me to budget for someone full-time in your local budget, I would drop 72,000 in. And if you wanted somebody budgeted half local, half grants, it would be 36.
Well, I would defer to Sandy on whether you're talking about half-time, .5, or full-time.
Half funded out of grants and half funded out of your local budget.
do you, I mean, Sandy was expressing to the challenges around the grant funding for it, that it seems to kind of stymie the process.
And every year I'm just concerned about how we're gonna keep Lara. You know, that's a position that I created since I've been here through the grant, but it's, like I said, it's always a little risky. We don't wanna lose Lara, she's our full-time reading specialist, interventionist. Made a significant difference in our reading. So
this year, has that all taken the back burner? She's not able to do that function because she's the math teacher? Or
she took one for the team. She bumped in to teach middle school math. She's teaching middle school math, the core classes in the morning to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Then she goes to her literacy specialist position in the afternoon.
Well,
and
and
services.
you hired someone too. You hired someone to put
We
them
did.
on a provisional license to do some
do
of
her
the
morning.
literacy intervention.
Which is her elementary, kind of her younger kids, that she's kind of been training this person also. And we did send that person to Wilson training, so she's in there in a 1-year position just while we kind of get through the year until we hire her.
So what does, sorry, it's not my, I was going somewhere with something, but it's not my job as a board member to do that. So.
I mean, if I recall the meeting in Berkshire when we were looking at kind of the teacher ratios and student ratios and number of people in buildings, you know, granted, we have some buildings with a much higher population of student numbers, but even compared to Bakersfield, which is our closest in alignment of kids in the building, we have met fewer kind of interventionists and support staff. So I feel pretty passionately about getting a math interventionist in this budget and budgeted and not having the stress and strain, because I've been a part of this situation before we merged with Lara, and the stress of were we going to get the grant and possibly not have such a vital person in our building who wears a lot of hats and is really important in our school.
And I'm truly appreciative too of Rhoda's thought process on the coaching piece, but you know, if you look at, you know, 2 interventionists, 2 coaches, like I think our need is much stronger for a math interventionist. Before I would say to the staff, look, I got you a coach, but we don't have a math interventionist. And they're saying to me, this student needs to be pulled, this student needs to be pulled. And so, and there's been a lot, like every time I try to put a Band-Aid on the math interventionist thing, and I have another issue right now with that para that I just put through a 12-week training to do the Bridges math, who's had to take a leave of absence. And that's kind of something Lynn was going to talk about, but I mean, that's just the next, just what do you know, it's math intervention, and here it goes again. So I'm back to really not having anyone in that can do that, because I can't bring in a sub for that para who knows how to do that.
And there's, probably answering my own
It's tough.
question, but there's no, not like we have somebody sitting around in one of the schools that we, like the coaching where we could do the sharing.
I don't
interventions that we
know
have.
how busy the interventionists are and the other, I don't know what their schedules look like, but.
If I were a principal, I would be like, sorry.
I think that there's no one who's sitting around. I can
No,
say that with certainty.
please know that's not like
Yeah,
that,
I
because
know.
we're all
We're
busy,
really
but.
tight.
I
the
visit
teachers
each of
are
the
really
schools
Yeah.
almost every month and have gotten to see some kind of firsthand the systems that have been built, and there have been strategic decisions over many, many years to build, when you think about that pyramid of interventions and supports for kids, and the approach in some places have been different than in other places, and that's kind of our reality right now, where we're supporting 4 schools who over time have made decisions, budgeting decisions, around building those systems of supports for kids, and have put a lot of those human resources in place, and they're being pretty well utilized in those buildings. And they do match the recommendations from like the DMG report and where we're trying to get to in terms of having the appropriate level of systems of supports for all learners. So I certainly would not advocate against getting math intervention in Montgomery. I think it is a wonderful idea. I have that little pessimistic piece of my brain that is like, math is like the we need math people out there. Like, if there are people thinking about going into education, please go into math. There's not a lot of people teaching math right
Yeah,
now.
what we did, and I'm not preaching to the choir in this, I'm sure, but like when we were trying to find our math interventionists from our Grand Bureau, I opened a middle school math teacher position, elementary math teacher position, an elementary teacher position, and a math interventionist. And
Just
then,
to see what you
and then I was transparent with them when they applied. I said, here's what I'm actually really looking for. Are you still interested? And I was able to come up with a couple applicants. So it's a tight pool for sure.
I did that last year, I kept changing the name of the position.
Yeah, just whatever I can get to get back on the top of the school spring list, please
Elementary
apply.
teacher with math concentration, it's like, really, it's 6, 7, 8, but come on, let me
I mean, I
live.
appreciate what everyone is saying about that, but I definitely see the need as well, like Mary is saying, and I feel like you can't not try
Right.
because you think you won't be able to
Yeah.
fill
And the
it.
teachers are advocating for this too, I
Yeah.
mean, there's,
Do you have any teachers that you think would apply for the math?
I don't know, but when I
Yeah.
know it's in the budget,
Right.
I might,
Right.
that's
Encourage.
my next,
Right,
that's in my back pocket.
Right.
Just
right.
because if there is someone that would like a change, and
Mhm.
then I would be happy to entertain that.
Yeah.
So that was, just wanna, but it's a need, it's been a need since I've been there. And I
Then again,
think-
if we know it's there, we can also do some recruiting when we go visit St. Mike's, UVM, try and catch a college kid before they know any better.
Well, I
They
had-
like skiing, and we got them in Montgomery, you can come ski here. and all that.
I had one from Johnson who wanted to do her student teaching this spring, and she was gonna come in January. I brought her in for a couple hours, showed her around, sat her in the classroom with Lara for the 8th grade math class. We talked for an hour. I got an email the next day. Sorry, I'm only K to 6, and that's 6, 7, 8, so I really can't do it. Like, and she was gonna be graduating, it was just, figured we'd rope her into the SU somewhere, but she's only K to 6. Like, they need to change that endorsement to K to 8.
Well, for our weird
Our schools are like K to
structures.
8.
They have them.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to get an extension on the K through 6 for anybody who's working in a K-8 building.
And it only exists in that building. They wouldn't be able to take that then and go apply for a job elsewhere.
But she said she couldn't even do her student teaching there
Right.
because
That makes
she couldn't be doing it in the 7, 8 classroom. So she was great. But
Well, so all that said, I mean, I don't, would we need a motion or can we,
Just direct them.
do
No,
people
your-
feel comfortable that
Your
we're
motion is gonna be giving
identifying
me
that
a
as a need?
bottom line dollar amount at the end of this meeting. So I just need some guidance if you guys are thinking if all of this is gonna be in the local budget or if half of this is gonna be grants and half is gonna be local.
but where would I find that
part-time,
grant
full-time.
money?
I would like for it to be in the local budget and not grant dependent.
I think that's right.
And part-time?
I mean, it sounds like Morgan was budgeting for a 1.0.
Yeah.
I mean, we would use the 1.0, absolutely. That person would be utilized.
Because I don't think
If
that
the
was
budget
enough.
can't sustain it, then obviously, half, 0.5's better than nothing.
Zero.
But, yeah, it's like Sandy said, it's a need now, it's been a need for years. And we just simply don't have another physical person in the building to help in that capacity, staff-wise.
So I just want to reiterate, this is your budget and I'll put in what you guys tell me to. And I think what you're telling me is the full 72,000 for a 1.0.
I think that's what we're saying too, yes.
Thank you.
Any other parts of this budget you want to go to? And, yeah, I think the other places where you could potentially move things in a large way are the tuition. I'm assuming you're still on board with the facilities manager. That's obviously a big increase programmatically. And the assessments could potentially move based on what revenue we hear, but we're not going to hear for a while.
Where's the, what page, Morgan, is the facilities manager on? What do we budget for that?
I budgeted 100, and it's on the last page.
Or
Salary and benefits.
Okay. And page what?
Page 19.
Page 19.
Right. The difference.
And Lynn, we also talked about the person to coordinate
The early end.
the early ed. Is that SU
Yeah.
budget, not NMB? Okay.
Operation.
Sure.
And so with that addition, the number of the equalized residential school tax rate before all of the CLA numbers would be $1.3684.
So your question before about a penny is 150 grand, 115 grand. So apparently we're fine with where we're landing since no one has asked to cut anything. Just saying.
Did we get any guidance from the state around like what was that, I feel like we've had conversations before about how much is an appropriate like percentage increase year to year?
So the number, well, not what's appropriate.
Right.
The yield number was based, I think, on a 4.5% to 5% increase in ed spending. So that takes into account the revenue piece as well. And you guys would be at 5.3.
That's with the added.
With the added and, right. If all those other numbers stay in place.
Just a question around the library position in Sheldon, the FY20 budget is 0. Is it just because the information wasn't?
Because it was MVU included it in the general instruction
Okay,
budget.
okay.
And we pulled it out of the library, is where we account for it.
It's not in the position.
no change in level.
Good question.
So I just want to bring back up the discussion around the Bakersfield science position. Last year it was, the reason why it was moved to combine was because they didn't have a candidate pool. And the community was told that that was a 1-year,
Stopgap.
yes. I just feel like we need to make sure that we at least place, just kind of like the math position, we place that money in there so that we can hire, at least place it out there and hire again. I think it's important to make sure that, science is really important.
Yeah.
At the middle school level, and I don't, there's nothing to be said about the ability of the teacher who's doing it right now. I just feel like we need to have a licensed person in there, you know, full-time to make sure that the kids are getting the science that they need so they're prepared for high school and have all of those opportunities that they.
I also think that, like, this year's 8th grade class is significantly smaller than some of the other, it's the smallest class, I think, in the building, and I know that they were further ahead because there's such a small class in some other areas, so I think that was part of the reason that made this a palatable idea. But I think you're right, it was meant to be a stopgap, and I know that there are other parents that are not particularly excited about the combo position. I'm not sure that, I haven't seen the data, and I don't know if the data will prove that has been a good, was a good decision.
Right. Well, I would be cautious to use the data anyway, just because of, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
And it's really small on the parent.
yeah, I just think it's important that we honor the position and what goes on in that position. So, I'm not sure what that means for budget, but it's
Probably
important.
$72,000.
I'm sure.
I guess.
Well, and then I'm also not sure what that means for next year and the schedule and is
So
it full-time?
we sent Rhoda home because she was sick, but she's not done working yet because I've been texting her. Sorry, Lisa, that's why I keep moving you away from Morgan. But
That's fine.
she's not opposed to the idea. She recognizes the need for that as well. There is, Bakersfield fights a space issue with number of classrooms and number of teaching positions. And I know Erin, you used to work there. I'm sure you remember that issue there. So that wasn't clear to Rhoda, that conversation was a one-year stopgap. So I think that was an oversight, that wasn't deliberate to not put that in. So she's not opposed to putting that back in.
So you don't
Opening
currently
that.
have, Bakersfield doesn't currently have a dedicated
Science.
middle school science teacher.
Correct.
She's doing both. So like my daughter just said, they used to do it 1 month social studies, 1 month science.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to have comments, 'cause anyway. And now it's like weekly, so 1 week social studies, 1 week science. And she's like an educator, you do your best and you dig deep and you know, you're using your best practices. I just, as a middle school, to be fully prepared and to really do NGSS well, it should be whether it's full-time or not, it should be somebody who's there for science. and do it.
Sure, certainly. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the dates of how that all happened, but as far, like, our principal left and then our science teacher
Yeah.
left. It was all really
Take
late
a-
in the game, so I'm
You
sure
had,
Rhoda
like,
missed.
0 candidates for middle school science.
Well, there's-
Yeah.
That was the.
There was 2.
That seems
Just
like,
that was late.
like an imperative, to have a middle school science teacher. I mean, that just,
And I'm not for
that's
sure that
that's
the
basics,
the
yeah.
current incumbent is wanting to continue this practice. I think it was sold to her as a one-year deal. So yeah, thank you for bringing that back up there.
I did not realize that was the case. I'm not sure if I missed the memo.
Yeah.
So if you were to add a person at that same rate, your per pupil ed spending would go up to 14,960. And the percent that would be on your warning about the increase would be 5.8.
Wait, we've gone from 2% up to 5.8?
Increasing per pupil ed spending.
Oh, okay.
And
And the equalized
that-
residential rate?
if that 5.8% number was too scary, to make it 4.9% and a equalized, per pupil equalized spending of 14,838, you'd want to cut out $130,000 somewhere else, which would most likely be a chunk of your tuition buffer.
Oh, well, I thought you were gonna say the facilities person.
I know.
That's what I thought.
Do we have any sort of a guess on what we plan to save with the facilities person? We don't, right? Like, we're not taking anything out of what we spent on contractors last year for anything like that,
Yeah,
right? So we have
I'm
no
not
guess.
trying to
I think that we will see those savings
That's
later.
Right,
you
not
know.
necessarily the first year.
Yeah, and it's not like we're gonna save 50 grand out of the fiscal plan budget.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna save some things that you can't calculate on a calculator though.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of how, the availability of your administrators to be doing administrator-like things and not subcontractor consultation type things.
Right.
So Maureen, you said the only place, well, I mean, I guess it could come from lots of places, but one of them would be,
The only obvious place to me is that we've got this these tuition assumptions that are that no one's doing a tech center, no one's dropping out, no one's going to early college. And so if you were telling me where are you going to cut money with the least amount of pain, I'm going to say I'm going to roll the dice on tuition, take 130 out of there, and hope that 10% of your 10th graders go to the tech center.
And if they
And if they don't, then we're in those.
Then we're probably not hiring those two positions right off, since it's going to be hard to find them anyway.
Well, yeah.
How many 10th graders did you say there were?
There are a lot. There are 95.
So just to give a
So
little
it's not
context.
unreasonable to think that 10
No.
kids are gonna go to the
Nate
tech center.
If it
typically
was
draws
over-
in about half of the 10th grade class
Yeah.
from Enosburg and about half of the 10th grade So, in a typical year. This
Right.
was a little, this year, I think we might have had a class that was more like a third. But I think it's reasonable to think that at least 10 of those will be NMV students.
And what did you say was the increase last year? What was the per, because that's one of the numbers, right? The 4.9, that's per pupil increase?
Per pupil increase, we don't know what the increase was the previous year because it was going from 4 individual budgets to the one unified budget. So we didn't
But I
actually
thought
put a
the
number
one
out.
that got approved, like in June of this.
So what, okay. So the per pupil ed spending was 14,140. That was the number that set the actual
Okay, right,
tax
so
rate.
you're saying we wouldn't have known what the increase was, right?
What it was for the
Okay.
previous year. And yeah, so I think this was Christie's question or Christie's point. Yeah, I wouldn't be throwing those figures out on the table if I didn't think they were defensible. If you wanted me to budget very aggressively, I could probably even take more of that out. But I think we need some sort of buffer, either
I
for
agree.
kids showing up or kids not doing the tech center.
Yeah.
I think it's a reasonable,
I think
Number.
10, I mean, I
Yeah.
would say I think 10 kids
Is a very safe-
historically is a very
Safe.
safe
I agree.
number of kids in a group of 95.
Right.
Very safe.
yes, okay, I think that's it.
Oh, it's like,
It
hold
keeps
on.
going on.
It's like on
It's,
and
oh,
on.
let me,
There's
I'll
actual,
try to do the
yeah.
walk.
Yeah,
It's
there's,
air conditioning.
It's
It
that
is.
thing right
Right
from that
behind
little.
you.
yeah. I can't feel my.
So changes from what's in front of you so far is I've added 2 positions under direct instruction at 72 each. And then I just took out 130,000 in high school tuition.
Okay.
That would give you a per pupil education spending of 14,838, or 4.9% increase. Your budget itself is up 3.3%.
Do we put the state average per pupil spending on that, We do.
In the material that we develop here.
that we
Yeah.
send to taxpayers?
Yep.
I think that, one of Lynn's comments at some point earlier this fall was, we've shouted from the hilltops, we spend so little.
Yeah.
Like, is that actually something to be proud of, right?
Right, that's what Emily just said.
Yeah,
Our kids deserve more.
better
at this
than
point.
that, exactly. So, like I said before, it's this balance of trying to keep the tax bills reasonable from year to year, but it's also, recognizing that we value our children and, why would we be the cheapest?
Right.
I mean, when we were looking at the salaries last night of neighboring towns, some of the tiniest towns nearby have the biggest sapling.
Right.
If they can do it, we can handle this, like, So yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. We need to move up the ladder a little here.
So what do you need next?
So if you guys are good with these numbers, there are 4 motions that I need.
Do you want me to take one part of my agenda
But
now?
first, I would like Lynn to take one part of her agenda.
So you asked me to come back about school nursing at Berkshire and Montgomery. So I think I can be pretty quick in the summary. I met with Rachel, I met with leaders from the Vermont Department of Health. There was a state level person that I met with, and 2 leaders from our local Franklin County Vermont Department of Mental Health to try to look at comprehensive school nursing in terms of need. And one of the things they said was, be careful about trying to fix a need by jumping at staffing first before you've done like the analysis that they're able to come in and help us do. So I have this person from the state who's going to be coming in and working with all FNESU nurses to try to take a look at, you know, what's happening in nursing and what are the strategies we're using to try to, you know, solve some of the problems we're facing. I do think in deeper conversations with Rachel and deeper conversations with both Sandy and Lenny and looking at the amount of nursing referrals that are happening, I think it is not unreasonable to think about increasing nursing level in Berkshire, given the number of students. However, when we first opened this conversation, the LPN idea was not available to us, and it is now. So I think that, you know, I've done some exploring with Notch about nursing staff, and there's the potential that we maybe could partner with them a little bit on this. So I would feel comfortable making a recommendation to increase. I would be really worried about making Berkshire full-time with an RN, because it would take the RN away from Montgomery. And I think we would struggle a little to put a half-time RN in Montgomery, and I don't think that's right. I think for now, a good stopgap until we do this analysis with all of our school nurses is to say, let's find ourselves an LPN that could provide coverage in Berkshire so that when Rachel is in Montgomery, she can really be focused on Montgomery and not taking calls from Berkshire. So I think that, to me, I would feel comfortable with that.
So are you saying make the LPN, are you a half-time?
Just
or-
half-time in Berkshire.
So Rachel would still split her time,
Yes.
but when she's not there, she would be complemented by an
Right.
LPN.
But not in reverse. You don't think that Montgomery needs an LPN when Rachel's at Montgomery, or
And-
at Berkshire rather?
And Rachel doesn't actually think there's a
Okay.
full-time nursing need in Montgomery when she is really looking at this data now. And I had
Okay.
this conversation with Sandy, and Sandy doesn't feel like there's a full-time nursing need
Great.
in Montgomery.
If you think you need some more coverage, Lenny.
Yeah, and I think the conversation I had with Rachel was that was sort of where this was from the beginning, wasn't really clarified that way, was that there was so much of a need at Berkshire that she felt like there was the need for someone to be there all the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
And is that LPN in here?
Yeah.
No, that's why I made him stop.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
we were so close. How much does a part-time LPN cost us, Morgan?
It is probably,
Hourly.
I don't know.
20?
The last time we had, I think it was 15 or 18. What do you
An
think?
hour.
like
I said 20.
20 an hour?
Just knowing what an RN is an hour.
Times
For
an hour? Like, there's a threshold, and that might be over that threshold. The likelihood that they would be able to afford it, or to take it through us, because they would say
the seasoned
it's because it's prorated.
I'd say 20,000 would be close if they were gonna take benefits.
So,
Leanne?
LPNs are not, I mean, they are definitely a little more realistic, but I don't know if you're thinking 20. per hour.
What are you thinking?
I mean, on the skimpy side, we might be able to do 22, but nursing has jacked right up, and so you might need to brace for a little bit more, even up to 25, 26. I mean, nursing right now is a good seasoned nurse could be making 30 to 35. An LPN is not all that far off, but it's lower, but it's not all that far off. So like a seasoned LPN, I'd really say 26, 27. Just telling you.
So would 25 be more like 25,000?
What is Rachel at?
I was just gonna.
I know.
Well,
so is
she's
Are you
on a
talking
teacher
salary or
contract.
hourly rate?
Hourly.
Right, so
This
a
would be an hourly
$20,000
rate.
salary is a $27 an hour rate for a 20-hour week job. So $20,000 salary comes out to $27.
Yeah, but he was including benefits in that
Yeah.
$20,000.
Right, yeah.
Do you offer benefits to a part-time? Or do you
It's
just
over
do
how many hours?
So
Maureen?
the part-timer would make
4.
more than.
What?
So, 7.4.
Sorry, what was that?
I guess I was just kind of thinking out loud, the part-timer would make more than Rachel in full-time.
And with a less degree.
Yeah.
Right.
I just wonder, like, we know that our school nurses don't get paid as much as, like, they could go to the hospital.
Right,
and
right.
make
Rachel's
way,
which is why I was throwing that out.
way more money. Like,
Right.
I think we, not to discredit what they do, but what they would do in the school setting, I don't want to go there because what I'm about to say
Probably
is not
different than
respectful, yeah.
What we would budget and what we would offer to pay wouldn't necessarily be the same thing. Like, we wouldn't start at what Leanne is saying, we would look first somewhere else, in another range, that's what I'm saying.
Do you hire a lot of part-time PNs, LPNs? No. I'm just thinking, like, we in Bakersfield have had, like, the mom who was a stay-at-home mom and happens to be a nurse and, I could, work on the school calendar, so there is a population that this would appeal to, that the dollar figure isn't quite as important to, but.
For sure, and right now, actually, my last hiring of nurses, there are a good pool of people out and looking right now. So you're actually hitting it right at the moment. I'm not sure that swing, if that's just a before the holidays swing, but I had no problem hiring 2 RNs. Whereas last year, it was crickets and we were scrambling hard. So, and with those RNs, there were a couple LPNs, so I may have a couple people.
Maybe
Yeah.
this is where you could pay me back for
I'm pretty sure we
stealing a
went
really
even.
valued
I'm
employee.
pretty sure we're even. We were even. But yes, I might have some suggestions for you.
One more off this point, but if we're kind of forecasting things that might not be in the budget, I know Sheldon coming from a different district, our math program has been different. And there's been talk about us moving towards its bridges, I believe, and that there would be a cost associated with that. So I'm not sure, still being green to the board, how do we budget for that and put that, would that be in here? Would that, if there's it's an expense, so it would have to be in the proposed, I would assume.
I've not built anything in here. I don't know if that's something that would come through CFP.
It could, from a conversation with Jody, I believe.
She said no.
She said no? Okay. I thought you
But
said she said yes.
No, she said no.
Grants. So
Oh.
I think, I want to be careful. I mean, we could,
Okay.
but at the same time, we have not made a decision to make that shift for
Gotcha.
next year.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm not feeling as pressured to move in that direction.
So it's nothing fiscally that we have to be concerned about in this
If you
warning?
wanted it there, in case we make that decision to shift there, we could. If not, we can look at diving into the budget once it's approved and think about where we're gonna find that money.
And then would it, still looking at, because there's the potential that you guys make that decision from now until the end of the school year, summer, and then start the following year? Or are you thinking, make the decision and then start, I don't know.
Estimated cost,
So
I'm just wondering.
it's just a little bit of a trap, this
Okay.
conversation, not,
And I
and you're
don't-
not doing it on purpose, I know that.
Then I'll,
I
can retract
there
that.
is,
I know there's a lot of discussion.
I'm not saying that this has to happen for next year, and I think I wanna be careful
Yes.
about how I answer this, because I think that my whole thing has been about, we need to make decisions based on data, and Christy's aware of where my stance is on that, and
I think my only concern is, the cost is significant. And does budgeting or not budgeting almost make a decision for next year? Or doesn't it? I guess that's kind of a question.
So is the cost in people or is it in stuff?
It's in stuff.
so like, what it was the
I mean,
number?
there's still, there's training and staff development, but I think that's,
But
Was
if
it
the
30,000?
it was 44. 44, I don't know.
But if
44.
if the decision was made for that it would go live next year, we would know that before this year's budget was fully spent.
Yes,
And so if there were money left over this year, we could use it.
okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's where my head was going.
I feel like if you put it in the budget, there's a message to the staff that I really am not meaning what I'm saying.
Oh,
Right.
no, I
It's also me being,
understand that.
knowing a
Taxpayers.
little bit of information about it and just being more financially oriented.
Well,
I'm like, it's a cost, should we put it, should we
It's a
not?
great
Yeah.
question,
So,
it really is,
yeah.
yeah.
And I certainly don't mean it that way. I just didn't want to make a decision here that hasn't actually been made, right?
Yeah.
So in my thinking, 44,000 is significant,
You're good at money, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if we didn't, then we aren't. And so that's why.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Good plan.
I think none of you are overspending this year is the goal, right?
Yeah.
We'll have that there at the end if we need it.
Did we come to a dollar figure on the
The
nurse?
nursing.
So I would, just to pull a number out of my hat, I would say 25,000. And I guess my question to you is, do you want me to add 25,000 or do you want me to just move 25,000 from tuition? So we're
That's what
staying
two
with the
kids.
number. That would be 2 kids, kid and a half.
11 or 12 techs.
We've already moved 10.
I moved
still seems
a dollar
reasonable.
amount.
Okay.
Safe?
Yeah.
Which is the idea as well, maybe
Yeah.
10 kids are going to.
Right.
And I feel like there's bigger tax push now than ever.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
think
sense.
that's a better way to do it.
Okay. So back to those 4 motions.
And we do.
The first one I would need is a motion to warn an FY '21 Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District budget of $16,834,820.
Wait, 16
16
million.
16,834,820.
What's that number again, Morgan?
16,834,820.
Really only $14,000.
Who would like to make that motion?
I will make that motion
Okay.
to warn the NMV budget for FY '21 in the amount of $16,834,820.
All in favor? Let's start with Lisa on the phone.
Aye.
Catherine, aye.
Aaron, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
Chelsea, I.
Leanne, aye.
Okay, thank you.
Motion number 2 would be to announce an FY '21 elementary tuition rate of $12,300. This is something we have to do for the state by January 15th each year. And basically what that means is that if there were a fully tuitioning town somewhere and they were sending kids to one of your 4 schools, that would be the tuition rate we would charge them.
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Erin. Lisa?
Aye.
Catherine, I.
Aaron, I.
Mary, I.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
Chelsea, I.
Leanna.
Thank you, ladies.
And if instead they want to send a 7th or 8th grader, I would want a motion to announce an FY21 secondary tuition rate of $12,300.
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Chelsea. Lisa?
Aye.
Catherine, I.
Aaron, I.
Mary, I.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
Chelsea, I. Oh, wait, do I need to say?
Yeah.
Leanna.
And then lastly, a motion to approve and sign the Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District 2020 Annual Meeting Warning.
Lisa, would you like to make that motion?
Sure.
Okay. Let's start with Catherine.
Catherine, I.
Lisa?
Aye.
Aaron, I.
Mary, I.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
Chelsea, I.
Leanna.
And I will have that for you to sign by the end of your meeting. Under Lynn's, we're going to talk about the annual meeting location and other informational meeting locations.
Can you give me that secondary tuition one more time?
$12,300.
Can I ask, in years past, we used to have before the voters, what can we do with this leftover money? Do we not have leftover money because we're in the new world now? Or is that later, or?
The leftover money is that $307,999 figure. And we are, at this point, we're putting it all back in the budget because of the big drop, or that's what I'm recommending.
Okay.
Because of the big drop from the previous year.
Okay.
If that goes up to 400 next year, then probably be suggesting we put 100 of it away to something.
Okay, gotcha.
Good.
Do you still have the envelope project on here?
Nope, I covered that right at the top, and that's all I got.
Can I ask a question on that? Is there anything related to that project that's like reflected in these numbers?
So the first interest payment on the bond is in that budget. The first principal payment won't happen until FY22.
Okay. It's included in that service?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you ready for me? I'm ready, yes, we're just patiently waiting. I haven't actually called upon you, but are you ready for us?
I am, I was waiting for your signal. So, I sent you a revised principal search timeline for Bakersfield. Did anybody have any questions about that? You can see that it pushed it back about a week and a half. It all seemed logical when I was typing it out until I put it on an actual calendar beside the Enosburg principal search, and I realized that's too much in that 3-week period. So it still gets us to the place where we're ending that process before the February break. One of the things I'd like you to discuss tonight is the makeup of your screening committee. So we have pushed out survey information to the staff in Bakersfield to see what they're looking for in their permanent principal. I say that permanent, like non-interim principal position. And so we're receiving that back. We've also pushed out an interest survey to see who wants to serve on a hiring committee. So I just want to kind of get a sense from you about how big. Are you okay with us making that committee and representation on that committee? Did one of you serve on it last year?
I did.
Erin, do you want to talk about that?
Like the process or?
Like the makeup of the committee?
There were 4, 5. In-house, so staff, so there's a couple classroom teachers, the administrative assistant, which I thought was was great because they're gonna work a lot with each other. Paraprofessional, I mean, there was a really nice rounded representation of the staff.
Any parents or?
There were 2 parents, and then myself and Lynn, and then Jody was there. I think Dan was there for at least interviews, so.
Dan Shook on the previous board.
Yeah, so I think he was sitting on, I mean, he was a board member, but it was more parent, again, representation. So it was quite a large room, but it was nice to hear the feedback from all those different perspectives.
Do you want me to put together something similar to last year?
I think that the principal position in Bakersfield is always a really hot topic in the community, and so, and we, even in my tenure, have gone through our fair share of principals, so I would want there to be, I think maybe this is unusual in compared to how other communities do a search, but I think that it's the right thing for that town to have a fairly nice complement of across the board.
Okay.
And I would think, I don't know how, I think last year you did first come, first serve, but it would be.
I'm not actually gonna do that this year
Yep.
because of, well, depending on where the numbers
Right.
lie. What I just met with the Enosburg staff today, what I said was, if we're looking for someone who represents kind of early elementary, everyone who has said we're interested in early elementary, I'll put those all together and pull one out of that. It wouldn't be like a whole random lottery, but it'll be kind of by category, so we can get a representative group, some veteran staff members, some newer staff members representing age levels or interest in the building. So I could do exactly the same, make sure that we have the community representation. And you're still gonna have that community engagement part where they can come out and give their feedback after they meet them. And I think
Right.
that was
That was
an
really good.
important part and helpful to beat the board's decision last year. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the last pieces under the Bakersfield principal and executive in the end. I think I can go relatively quickly through, sorry. So we already talked about school nursing levels, so look at me, I'm gonna zoom right through here. I have nothing that I need to bring to you under student. We're gonna talk about administrator negotiations at the very end. That Sandy Alexander will stay when we let Lenny and Christy go. I wanna just, Lisa is by phone today because she is a member of our state legislature and they're in Montpelier now. So Lisa, I'm handing out a piece of paper that has your picture on it. These are all of the representatives and senators from our region. So this gives you a contact person, so you can look for your town, and that tells you exactly who your representatives are and what their email is. So if you try to contact them about something that comes up in the legislative session, you have that contact sheet to refer to.
And if I can interrupt for a minute, Lynn, if anyone is having trouble getting in touch with their local representative or senator, just email me and I'll get you connected.
Did you all hear that? Yep. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So, I sent you all a link to your new board email address. It's on our new fnesu.org email. We're not gonna make you make that shift yet. We're gonna start sending things to both that email address and your preferred email address now, but by July 1, we wanna make that shift so that all of our communications about board business will be through that email account. So the intention is to build towards that, okay? So I was saying to Mary when we were waiting to begin this meeting, how thankful I am for Courtney Fletcher. So I have, for those of you who've been on the board for a while, when I first began as superintendent, we had an opening for the administrative assistant to the superintendent, and I chose not to fill it right away because I wasn't 100% sure what I was looking for in that role. I had some things in my mind around grant writer, I was thinking about communication, and I wasn't sure like what was the work going to be and the need for me to have support in my role. And so we, about 1.5 years in to my tenure here at FNESU, I hired Courtney. She's been with me now for right around 1 year, and she's doing some really good things. So she has shifted from, when we hired her, we told her we wanted her to start as my administrative assistant, really the administrative assistant for my floor, and have her shift into the role of communications coordinator. So she's been doing a really good job with that, and you see a lot of things that get pushed out, information about our SU, that's all coming from Courtney. And she and Dominic have been working hard on communication planning for the SU, and they recently attended a training, and it was about accessibility. So you see the videos that we push out on social media, and we've got a lot of really positive feedback about that. And the first one, there was no closed captioning, and when they went to their training, they realized we really need to be focusing more on the accessibility piece of how we're communicating out to the public. So she worked incredibly hard on figuring out that piece. So we were very proud of her for getting the closed captioning piece kind of under her belt. In that last video, closed captioning was a thing, and she did tell me what she learned was the computer doesn't always pick up what you say, especially if you're recording kids, they're almost always wrong. So she did a lot of overriding on that. She's done a redesign of the web page. That's something that's been visible to me for a while, is that our web page didn't look the way we wanted it to look, and we're still, it's a process. One of the things I promised you as board members is that we would really work on making it more accessible so that people wanted to watch our board meetings or see some things that were going on, that it was going to be like front and center on our web pages. So Courtney's done a really good job of that. And she talked about, she was willing to come here tonight and next week to the Enosburg Richford, and I said, well, you know, she has lots of little kids at home, and how about you do a webcast? I didn't know that word, but I knew what I meant by it. So Courtney put together this webcast for you. It's short, it's 3 or 4 minutes. So here she is. Oh shoot, I did not do the speaker thing again. I always forget that part. I'm hoping you can hear her.
Hello everybody, this is Courtney Fletcher, and this is my first screencast, so I'm hoping it goes well. Right now, I am currently on our FNESU website. I type in www.fnesu.org, but fnesu.net works as well. Dominic and I have been trying to make our website a little bit more accessible. So what we've done is, when you come to the home page, we've included our Facebook profile right here. So everything that we post on Facebook should automatically be sent right to the website. And you can see, just scrolling down, that there's a few things here from the last couple of days. If you click on the little F, it brings you right to our Facebook page. Or you could like, comment, share it right from this screen. The other thing we've done is we've put our latest meetings from YouTube right on the home page. So you can see FNESU December, Enosburg Richford December, and NMB December are all right here. The cool thing about this is all you have to do is click the play button in the middle, and it automatically should play right from the home page. So it doesn't bring you to another link. You can look at it right here, or you can do full screen. The other thing that we've done is we made folders for all of the previous school board meetings this school year. So if you go into the school board tab, go down to school board meeting videos, you can click on which one you'd like. I'll just click FNESU board to show you. And once you click on it, this is the URL for the YouTube links from Northwest Access TV. So you have December, November, October, September for all of them. And in some cases you have August as well. If you don't want to go through all of those tabs, you can go right to the quick links and it will bring you to the same exact page that I just showed you. So here we go again with all of the meetings from this year. Once the January meetings have been posted on YouTube, I will change it so December will stay here and then the January meetings will be right on the home page, and then there'll be the quick links as well. If there is anything else that you would like Dominic and I to fix, change, add anything to the home page or anything, just please shoot me an email and I will try to get that all set for you. Thank you. Have a great night.
I have one complaint. She's not there, and I haven't met her, and I really want to know what she looks like.
You've not met Courtney?
She's so sweet.
I don't think I've met her.
Oh, well, I'll definitely bring her then to a future board meeting.
Am I the only one who's not met Courtney?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right.
Do you want her to come to local meetings or do you want her to come to SU?
I don't care. I understand her personal time is valuable, and so I don't mean to infringe. I just wouldn't have been great if I could have seen her face, that's all.
Well, how about this? The next thing I ask her to present, I'll have her come. I was trying to be thoughtful of 3 children under 4.
Yeah, me too.
So
Me
one
too.
of these for the district
Yeah.
employees would be
What's that?
helpful. So one of these for the district employees would, even on
Morgan's
the,
grimacing, they love those.
I know how that goes. It's helpful.
So you had asked me to tune into, I've kind of had this running to-do list in my office, and communication has been one of them. And one of the things under communication I heard was about we really struggle getting people to come out to our annual meeting. And it's really important that people hear, especially in this new merged system, how important it is to hear what's going on so you could be an informed voter. I think as much as we want it, it's still going to be a struggle to get people to drive in their car in an evening in February to come out to your annual meeting. So you asked me to explore the live feed options, and we do have some options. I have Dominic on that. The one part, and I've said this to some of you, is that I am not opposed at all to the live feed part. I think that it's too soon for us to be ready for any kind of live participation because you really are supposed to be a resident for an annual meeting, and I don't feel comfortable knowing enough about how you would tune into who you were actually talking to online. So I think it's important that we can put it out there as you could see what's going on, but have it be one way and really figure out the other pieces. I did ask around, as I told you I would, and there's nobody else that people are aware of that are doing this for annual school meetings. I threw it out to via BSA and asked around, and they weren't aware. Oh, BSBA.
This has been my axe to grind, I will admit that. And maybe I think everybody else should be doing this because we run our entire nursing education program over live interaction video. So it's second nature to me. But I think I totally agree with you about trying to manage folks being able to ask questions and, whether or not they're actual voters. But I think that just live streaming it is a giant step in the right direction. And if we can do it, fairly well and easily, I am 100% behind it. I think it's a great thing. I mean, you're right. We have a really hard time getting people to come to meetings, and even if they can't ask a question, their question might be answered by someone who asks it in the actual meeting or in our discussion. So this is super exciting to me. Thank you for doing this.
So there's also the question about your actual annual meeting. So last year you held your official annual meeting, and we know that we struggled a little with language in our newly merged system, calling things what we had called them in single districts, and it felt like it had a different meaning certainly not deliberately, but it felt that way to some of our constituents. So we're trying to be really clear in how we're communicating. You have one official annual meeting where you come together. Last year you held it in Berkshire. The decision from the board members at the time was Berkshire felt most logical because it was kind of in the middle in terms of the 4 communities. So is that your intention for this year or not?
Can I ask a question before we answer that question? And that is, do we know what any other merged town district is doing? Is there anybody before us in this world?
In terms of what they're doing for their annual meeting?
Yeah.
Look into that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Can we hold it, if we decided, could we do it in Enosburg instead of one of our 4 towns?
No.
That's not a good, I was just thinking it's neutral.
I know.
And it's maybe more central.
Rotate them around year to year or something.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think holding it outside of one of our towns is probably a bad idea. But I do think rotating it year to year from one town to the next feels equitable to me. I think that it would be a nice gesture for us to Mary, you finish my sentence.
Well, I feel as though it'd be nice to rotate, so that, I mean, granted, it's only gonna circle back to, you know, one town every 4 years, which is a long time.
And you're gonna get the most
but,
turnout in whatever town you're hosting it in, is my only concern.
Yeah,
And maybe the least turnout from the town the furthest away. I mean, in theory, you
Yeah.
don't know though, really.
I think it's hard to say and predict exactly.
I
And,
feel like
you know,
most of the people who want to show up are gonna show up wherever it
Maybe
is.
we should offer a bus from each town to.
I was suggesting that maybe this year we hold it in Montgomery. And then we rotate, next would be either Bakersfield or Sheldon the following year.
Oh, no, it's right here. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Where's this?
We were worried about
Following
how
year
far
would be
away
a
you
new
were.
gym in Sheldon.
What's that?
The following year would be a new gym in Sheldon.
Well, yeah,
Good
that
show.
would be,
Yeah.
that would be
That would
great,
be
and that'd be
nice.
awesome to show that off.
Would be.
I mean, I know that there was a lot of kind of collective mourning on the part of townspeople in Montgomery. We've always had a really huge turnout for our annual school meetings.
There was a fair number of people there when we were there.
Yes.
We weren't all happy to be there, but they were there.
So, I think that kind of in an homage to all the 4 towns, only holding it exclusively in Berkshire does not sit well for me. Centrality notwithstanding, I understand, I mean, really, Enosburg is kind of
Yeah.
dead in the middle, but I think we do need to kind of have it within the schools of the NMV.
Well, and it is reciprocating what we as a school board have decided to do, like we're rotating around, so I think that's a great idea.
I am
to
a bit
rotate.
concerned about parking. I'm not kidding, like, really sending a bus from each town might not be a bad
like the idea
idea.
of having a bus.
Because,
I
course,
don't
that's
know
an
if you're gonna
expense.
have so many people that you can't park
really?
in here. Only have
Okay.
small handful.
Right.
Even in our,
Really? That will go?
I
Okay.
mean, even in when it was just Montgomery, our most attended meetings, we still had ample parking, so I think that would accommodate people coming from other
And
towns as
speaking
well.
typically from the Bakersfield perspective, it's been very
Okay.
poor. You know, there's probably 25 people that are
Okay,
12
that's not-
couples,
Okay,
right?
I
So-
pictured.
Well,
bigger
and some of
than
those are your administrators too, if you really add in
Yeah,
how many
right.
representatives.
that. Yeah, I thought for sure it was bigger than that.
No, it's not very big at all. It is very typically the same people year to year, so I think, you know, like Lenny said, those people will make the effort to go because it's their thing, so.
Can someone clarify for me why we're doing it so much earlier than we've historically done the meeting? February is early, I mean, we've always
Voting.
done ours after town meeting day, March
Oh, right.
12th-ish.
We're doing the Australian balloting on town meeting day because all your election workers are already working. Because
okay.
they're all doing that. The informational meeting, I think, was because you're trying to get out ahead of
Right.
school break.
Yeah. Well, the other piece is everybody's informational meeting in the past was generally on the same night. So you
Right.
have your like informational meeting for your town the night before town meeting in the other 3 towns. And you can't do it on that night because then you would exclude anybody who wanted to go to their town meeting that night before. So we knew we had to do it ahead of that so that people still had the ability to participate in both their community, their town meeting, and their annual school meeting. So putting it in the middle of vacation didn't sit well, so we kind of brought it to the place where Enosburg and Richford landed, so I think you're like the day before.
What is the date?
February, it's on the next page of my notes, February 19th.
Okay.
So we just need to determine tonight the time and the location.
Seems like a Saturday morning, Mary, in the past,
No, it was always the Monday after town meeting day,
in the evening.
in the evening.
Okay, gotcha.
And we would provide childcare.
I remember that part.
Yours was like 7:30, wasn't it? It was pretty
Yes.
late.
7:30.
I feel like ours was like 6:30.
We did it at 7 last year. I don't know if there'd be a reason to change it from that. I don't think there was any motion in the organizing meeting to set a time.
I don't remember that.
So, here, Lynn, on your agenda, you say, will the board want to schedule informational meetings in the other 3 communities? Does that imply that the informational meeting is rolled into the official meeting?
That's what we did last year.
But we don't,
All
we
the other
definitely,
towns are informational. One, you have to designate one as the annual,
okay.
right?
So, and that was the change for us, because
Right.
they were all always called informational
Gotcha,
meetings.
we don't want to make that mistake
And we don't want to make that
again.
mistake
Yeah.
again. One will be your annual meeting
Gotcha,
on the 19th, wherever we are that night.
okay.
I would like to just keep it as one to help with confusion. But if we're also gonna be doing the live streaming, then it's accessible to more people. And just for schedule, my head was spinning last year.
100% agree.
With all the informational meetings
To
you mean
have
there?
to be at,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's important that if we're gonna do all of them, that we are all there as a collective,
It's hard, it's hard.
standing together to
Mhm.
support the
I
budget.
was very grateful that you were at the
Yeah.
Montgomery one. Why did I get chewed up by myself?
I see just one.
So let's just go back to the time thing. Did we settle at 7? Anybody have any in the works?
I feel like it allows people to get home, to eat
Have
dinner,
and
to
then
feed
go.
your kid, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
For you?
Look, we need to decide a location for this year.
I would be inclined to suggest we hold it in Montgomery this year. Can I make that, shall I make that as a motion?
The motion, you're going to sign a warning that
Says.
has the right place on
Yeah.
it.
I think you probably are okay with it being in Montgomery. You're okay with it being in Erin?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, ladies?
Mhm.
Everybody's okay? Okay. So Montgomery this year, and we're gonna live stream with no chatting from the participants.
I have wondered if there is a way to collect questions, like if we had put it out in the mailer, that if people had questions that they wanted answered live streamed, that they bring them to their board representatives? Is that
Oh, that we could
possible?
just answer them, yeah.
Well, that we, answer them on the
Cover them
live,
in our discussion.
is that? Because then we would know the residents.
So
As
would you
to-
want, do we have, I feel like we might have a board email that's just like
General.
board, like a board general email box. So I wonder if people on the MV side, if we don't, I bet Dominic could make it, had questions, they could email it to that.
address.
Okay.
And how will people be getting these budgets to look at in advance of the meeting, because historically, I know in Montgomery, it was in the town book, but they're likely not going to be printed by February 19th.
Last year we did a mailer, right?
So
Like,
don't
what
they have
happened?
to be by February 19th? Because
I
they have,
can't,
it's.
town meeting
for
is
town
what,
meeting.
March
Or-
6th?
Third.
March 3rd, 6th. I don't know, I
Tuesday,
mean, I'd
March
have to
3rd.
ask Charlie when they go to printing.
So they will be going in all the town books. We have to get them to the town by January 20th, week of January 20th. So that's when
Well, I was
they're
gonna say, is it worth like,
finalizing it.
we did a
Oh,
postcard last year.
We did a mailing and we could do that
It was a
again.
Was it?
2 pages.
I'm just thinking like,
Yes.
Lynn's looking terrified.
No.
Like
Well, it was a lot of-
a postcard
That
that
was a
says, the annual meeting is at this night and you can join us live stream here. Please submit your questions in advance to this email. And there's a link with all the information, you know, what the town books are available, or link on the FNESU website, that kind of thing. Because we could put all that information in the school newsletters, but then you're missing all those other community members that are not parents.
So can you just, my brain was catching up to you.
Yeah, sorry.
The mailer, okay, so I get time, date, location.
Yep, live stream information. If you'd
How
like.
to log on for a live stream, you mean?
Yeah, or the link to the live stream.
Yeah.
And if you have a question if you can't attend the meeting in person and you'd like a question answered during the live stream, please submit it to this email address.
Like before. a
Yeah,
certain
by
time.
X date.
And Morgan, it seems like we need to verify with each town clerk when books
We've done that.
when books are being printed, so that everyone has a chance at least a week before this to get their hands on the budget, right?
Well, listen, now you're pushing.
Well, if we're putting something on the postcard, we would include budgets are available on the
At your town
FDC
hall.
website at this address, and then we might give a shorter version, depending on the space inside of that.
Oh, yeah.
But,
We also could give them a link to the webpage that could have it.
Right.
so we will need to look into how quickly we have to get it to a post office to get it out, bulk mail, in time for the 19th. Is this something that you guys need to see before we send it out? or-
The mailer?
Yeah.
Nah, I don't trust you. I trust you guys.
Last year, we literally were stalking postmasters to get it out in the right number of days to get it into those homes.
I mean, do you think that you could just send it out quickly by an email, just so we could lay eyes on it beforehand, just to make sure everything looks copacetic?
I agree.
Because I'm sensitive to having not caught the error last year.
Well, it wasn't an error, we would have known to.
Well, that we weren't
annual
delineating
meeting.
between the annual meeting and the
I
informational
don't
meetings.
think we would have known that because
Yeah.
the context of that that was the right language for our historical context.
Yeah.
But I hear you.
But yeah, opened up a big can of.
And we are also saying we are not doing any other preliminary informational meetings in the other towns. This is it.
That's only my
Yeah.
hope.
I'm in agreement, what do you guys in the other
If
counties?
people care that much and they're that vested, they're going to come.
Yeah.
They're gonna drive 30 minutes, 20, whatever it is, they'll go if they care.
I really like the idea of Montgomery offering childcare. Is that something that, how did you guys do that?
We usually get some of the 8th graders or the high schoolers
Just like,
Oh.
say here's some
in the kindergarten room with the little
parents.
ones, and then they'll watch a movie.
There was no
and-
time for pizza, there were meetings that, I can remember one meeting in
Oh.
Montgomery, it was over in 7 minutes.
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah.
That was back in
I was thinking payment for the kids who are volunteering to babysit.
no, community
pizza for
service.
that.
It's community service for
Okay.
them.
Yes.
Just sign a little big form.
So that would be
Perfect.
something in the language, you know, to make sure on the postcard that childcare is available. Because that makes it a lot easier for folks.
How do we
Who
gauge
sets
how many
that up?
helpers to have on staff?
Your whole
Kind of
eighth grade
wing.
class.
It has always worked out okay in the
Yeah.
past.
Mentioned you made. Well, and I'm just wondering who set, like, I mean, it's in your school building, so that means you're, like, you guys are in charge, like, somebody in Montgomery's in charge of, because then if that's a tradition, then whoever school is the next year, then it's just, they'll set it up.
Yeah,
How
I
that
think
we-
that,
okay.
that makes sense.
Look at it.
And I can work with Sandy on that, no problem.
Before Morgan distracts you too much with that, I forgot something.
Oh, man.
The contemplation of reduction in force.
Oh, right.
I do need a motion from the board to direct me to send a letter to the teachers union, letting them know that we may contemplate a reduction in force. This is something that we do every year in case we do have an issue with budget and we have to make a cut. We have to let them know at this time of the year that that could happen. It doesn't mean that we're going to, it just means that the door's open if we need to.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Everyone in favor, we'll start with Catherine.
Catherine, aye.
Aaron abstain.
Lisa?
Aye.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
Chelsea, I.
Leanne, aye.
Thank you, ladies. And one abstention, and no nays.
When the union communicates that with teachers, is there some context around that? And the reason I'm asking is because that wasn't necessarily something that was done in,
To be honest with you, I don't know if they do communicate it to the broader. It's a letter, it's a formality.
Yep.
A letter that I have to send
Yep.
to the union president and the officers.
okay.
So I CC the
So it
officers.
may not be communicated
They
to.
know.
Okay.
They know it's not cause for alarm.
Yeah.
If we're going to reduce, we'll actually have conversations about those individual staff
Okay.
members.
Yes, thank you.
It's like an under-talking among teachers. We know it's happening, like you know it's happening. You
Yeah.
just hold your breath until the vote passes.
Morgan, you need us to start
I
signing
need you
these?
to review those first to see if you can find any errors.
You need Lisa's eyes.
Jean Marie,
I know.
do you need your principals
I know.
besides Sandy?
Did you, it's like till it's like 9, it's only 9:31. I mean, Mary was complaining at 8:45, and I was thinking, these Bakersfield meetings that go till midnight sometimes.
It's intentional.
Thank
So
you
I'm-
both.
I'm dismissed.
Yes, you may leave now.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
How many of the towns actually have town meetings? Like, every one of them?
Yeah, I think they would have to.
Like, to have an audience and have like a whole thing going
You know,
on
I'm
from
sure you
10
have
to
it
2?
in Shelton.
Oh, God, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
but not every town
Not
has a
every
town
town
meeting
does it.
anymore.
They just do.
I don't think Burlington or Essex.
These.
Swanton does it.
Yeah, just go do the Australian
You
ballot.
vote, but we have an actual set time.
Very
do.
rigorous, engaged
Same with
town
us.
meeting.
Yeah.
We don't.
So-
We have a little league.
Okay, so
No.
usually the school board in years past would
Go to that.
we go, we're sitting front and center with the select board, fielding questions, giving state of the state and, but it would be our chair.
Oh, whoa.
Hey, Jean Marie. So that's why I'm bringing it up. I don't know what the expectation is.
We've never done that in Bakersfield.
And Morgan,
Or set up there?
they serve
No.
lunch.
No, at select
So
board?
I
Or
think
at
this
town meeting?
19
No, no.
meeting is kind of replacing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you set up that expectation that you're gonna go to that, you all have to be in a different place on that night because they all are on the same night.
Or
During the day.
Are yours on Tuesday?
Ours is on Tuesday during the
We,
day.
ours is like
Ours is
10:30 to like 1,
Yeah,
they
it's
serve
social.
lunch, they
Yeah.
have cookies, it is a big to-do.
Okay. So
That's the
yours,
best part, all the treats.
Girl
yours
Scouts
is
make it
different.
killer.
All of ours have
Yeah.
had the school portion happen the night before, or in Montgomery's case, the Monday after.
Yeah, no, ours is right
Okay,
at
we'll tell
town.
them to come on February 19th. Well, we're gonna mail them a thing.
You can, but I'm just saying from a, like a historical Sheldon resident perspective, like our, senior members of the community walk to the school with their books in hand. It's just a part of our culture.
And is the school where you have town meeting?
Yeah. So the select board, I mean, yeah. I mean, if we needed more,
Just a mailer.
if people had, in-depth questions around finances or budget or, why this increase and why that, or we have our town audit.
But last year, we had that meeting in the library.
Informational.
Yeah.
And we had like.
And then you did it again at the
3
town
people
meeting.
come.
Well,
pretty
but no,
much.
they had it at their town
It's
meeting.
at our actual town
Because this
meeting.
was later.
The people, yeah.
So what-
We didn't warn a budget last year
Yeah.
at our
I
town
forgot
meeting.
about that.
So what did you guys
Do
do?
last year.
at-
Ask
there.
questions, I was there. They wanted state of the state, they wanted to know what was going on with, whose position was up. We were then a 3-person board and they just wanted information on that. It didn't go too in-depth because Julia Cowan, our chair at the time, said, we're not warning a budget, we have no information to give you, so this is what it is. More to come. So they didn't really have a whole lot to ask, but they're gonna be asking questions. And it's just not in the culture, it's just not what they've done. So, just.
Is that something
people
that
would go that,
I'm just wondering if that's something that the Sheldon reps on this board, like, do you think that it's worth having we're in a different place now? Like if you guys went to that and she's poking you in the back.
Sure,
I'm
tapping your chair.
Oh, you're coming, oh, you're coming.
Let's put this on Julia Cowan's plate.
Right.
She's
not
no
here.
longer a resident.
But if you just explain why the shift.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
I'm capable of doing that, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, there's going to be some in-depth questions, whether I explain it or not. Sheldon residents are going to their town meeting on the 3rd of March, and there's gonna be some questions that I can't provide answers to. They're gonna be Morgan-oriented, or please explain CLA, please, I mean, I can prep as best I can.
bad position too.
It,
'cause
it
like
a
we
little
were
bit,
saying, having
it
all
does a
the-
But I
little bit.
also think that if Morgan and I march in there, they're gonna be like, great, this is how we do business. We're gonna
Yeah, from
continue
now
doing
on,
business the
right.
same way.
No, I
And
think
now
that
you're sort
could,
of-
that could be an opportunity to say, being the first year, being the first warned budget in a merged district, we're here to be supportive of this and to inform you that this will be the last year. I mean, we don't have to do that. I didn't know if you were all aware of, it's like, it's part of the Sheldon culture. And if you go, like, I think UVM students came last year and videoed and did interviews with some of the people at town meeting, and they had been going all over the state. And the feedback we got from those students were, we have never seen a town meeting like this. Like, this is.
You're not making this sound palatable to someone who you're trying to throw into the fire.
Old school Vermont.
It's old
Yeah.
school
What
Vermont.
town meeting was.
It's,
Yeah.
you have
Still
to
there.
go to feel it. It's part of the Sheldon culture. So,
You don't think it could just be put into the mailer that we're not showing?
I'm just trying to be respectful. Sure,
I
it
know.
can.
I know.
Of course it can. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be respectful, even if it is the last year, and or I go with information I could get eaten alive. Because
Can we
Morgan's
kinda-
gonna be there.
Can Lynn and I kick this around a little bit?
Please
Figure out how
do,
to
yeah,
that?
and I'm not hell bent on any certain fashion, but I just
Yeah.
want to put it out there, yeah.
Oh, I get it.
But
You
so
look
is-
very perplexed, Lynn.
It's not that I'm perplexed, but I get into the whole equity thing, like, then, so if we do that for Sheldon, why are we not gonna break apart and like then go to Berkshire's town meeting and then,
Is that how
Go.
Berkshire's always done it?
yeah. The
The
school
same
has-
way?
Yes, but it's the night before.
So they don't have a town meeting on town meeting
No,
day?
they just Australian ballot that next day. They
Well, I
have
think- I think-
Bakersfield does. We have a
Okay.
town meeting,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then, but the night before is this.
Yeah,
schools-
see, we've
the
never
schools-
done, we've
Yeah.
never done
It was
this.
all together.
Last year.
Is the timing
Because we
of,
already started. No, go ahead.
is the timing of the annual meeting then kind of funky as to how it used to be done? Because like you're saying, they went to town meeting, they got their book probably there, or did they get the book beforehand?
It's mailed beforehand.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they
it's
didn't have
mailed
it
beforehand,
before,
but-
but then I was thinking in our case, because Mary, you said the meeting was after town meeting?
Yeah.
So they might have, again, gotten their book at or around town meeting, and then the
Right.
following.
Yeah, and then we
I'm
always
just
have a
thinking
stack
again,
at
the
the
information
meeting.
sharing and
Yeah.
it's all.
But I think it
So-
was complicated, we wouldn't get anyone if we did it on February break.
Yeah, that's why it's
That's
the
why we're
19th,
a
'cause
week
we had a
earlier than
break.
what we'd like to
Yeah.
use,
Right.
February break.
So the difference in Montgomery is that you voted from the floor, and I don't think that's what Sheldon,
No,
you
we
did
vote from the
voted
floor.
from the floor?
You vote
On
for,
school budget?
on school budget, on positions, open
Okay.
positions, select board,
Difference.
school board.
And
Any-
Sheldon did it the same day, so they would run the select board for a while and they'd take a break
Correct.
and run the school board. Whereas Montgomery has always been.
It's like a 3-hour
Later.
thing.
A lot of years ago, it used to be together. When I was a kid, I feel like it was together.
When we, 20 years, you
Yeah.
know, back 20 years ago or so it
But
was.
it was too long, so they
And,
broke them apart.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I will be there, so I'm happy to go, and if they're like, can you come sit? Sure. I am the Sheldon rep, I'm happy to do so and do my best to answer questions they might have, and if I can't answer them, I'll say I can't answer those questions, and I'll find answers, but, I mean,
Well, I think, no matter how we land on that,
Uh-huh.
I think we do have to, I think this is more fuel to the mailer. We've got to do the mailer, and I think it should also be in the school, Sheldon must do a school newsletter that they send out to
Mhm.
parents, like just to say, here's where you need to go to, like, all your questions could be
Yeah.
answered. No, whether or not we do something at town meeting, I think we should just
it's
be really
definitely,
clear that.
it's not so much the parents of the kids, it's the older community
Yeah,
members.
yeah, I know, they're the ones that come to
Yeah,
the-
with their highlighters and their red pens and their
Yeah.
books that they have gone through and the tabs and, yeah.
They're trying to find the math error.
Would it be
And they'll
helpful?
ask you, and they will ask, why does this match the checkbook? That's what they ask.
Would it be helpful to have like a kind of cheat sheet, like a one-page layperson's kind of, that Morgan would want to write out to translate the kind of complexities of the numbers and that would go along with the budget so that anyone who doesn't come to the February 19th meeting in Montgomery but then shows up in Sheldon on the 3rd and has like some kind of the bigger questions about like the increase in the budget and stuff like that, that would kind of lay it out as opposed to, you know, this
Just that big
form
number.
where it can
Yeah.
just be
Well, there's
a kind
this.
of
Well, I
morass
feel
of
like last
numbers.
year you did something
Yeah.
that really,
And we'll probably
with
do something
different
like
colors
that in
and
the-
it was
in the,
clean, it
mail.
was
Yeah, wasn't it
easy
more
to
like
read,
that?
yeah, that was helpful.
Oh, was that with the arrows?
Yes,
That was really nice.
I like that.
Yeah,
Mixed
So some-
reviews on the
so
arrow.
something like that,
What?
We would do something
We're
like that
never
for the
using a
mailer,
down
so-
arrow
Okay.
again.
and then to
Or
have a
there.
stack at each polling,
Sure.
at each, you know, location on the 3rd so
Mhm.
that people can pick them up too and.
So that overview.
And they have a great lunch,
Can I
guys.
make a quick suggestion?
Absolutely.
Franklin and Highgate are likely struggling with the same issue right now because they've
Yeah, big-
always
yeah.
traditionally had both school and town on the Tuesday. So you might want to reach out to Julie Reginald and find out how
What they're
they're
doing.
wording their mailer, if they have one, or how they're even this in their district.
Okay.
Good idea.
I have a lunch meeting with her on Friday, so I can ask her then.
So that might help you and Morgan come to a consensus on what you know about Sheldon, because I get what they're saying from Sheldon, that this is totally different for them this year.
It's like, you gotta find this happy medium of like being respectful, but starting a new tradition.
I totally
you know,
agree.
like
Totally agree.
somehow-
I don't think they were ever under the impression that they would never have this at their meeting again.
Right,
That was not
right.
communicated,
Yeah.
and that I feel bad about.
Yeah.
So they're gonna
Well,
be
you
like.
can't, cause you
You
didn't
can't foresee
know the
everything.
future.
It's kinda like-
You didn't even know you were
but
gonna
even
be with
last
us
year to
at
give
this
some
time last
sort of
year.
a
Yeah.
forecast, I mean.
Yeah, you're right.
You didn't know you were gonna be with us
Be
at this
sitting here.
point last year, right? That all came later.
Ish.
So,
Some people might.
you thought you were coming, but,
Right, but we'll figure it out.
okay.
You're welcome.
All right.
So has anybody found any errors on the line?
I'm talking to
A
my
lot of
daughter.
eyes have seen it, but usually one slips through.
You found one, you mean? Is this
I
a trick,
have
is this a trick question?
This is not a trick question.
It sounded like it,
Are
didn't it?
It is 9 after 9 at night.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
it's
it's
almost
way-
10.
Yeah.
So my proofreading skills are greatly
So if
diminished.
that's good, I'm gonna have Catherine start with just signing 2 copies, and then we'll pass that around, so everybody's signing the same 2.
Okay, this
That's a great idea.
Lynn, are we at the point where I can leave the meeting now since I'm not signing? Is there anything else crucial coming up?
Well, we are going to be negotiating with Sandy Alexander as soon as we're done doing this.
Okay,
And
and I can't stay for that. I
Okay.
was hoping it would be done by now, so if that's the only thing left, I apologize, but I have to leave the meeting.
Okay,
You've been a trooper, Lisa.
thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. It would be hard to be on the phone for a meeting like that for that long.
It's tough.
Yeah.
You're like, what did you say? Like, yes, hi.
Good thing, my low power mode button just came on.
My little power moves on too.
It's okay.
So,
Are you done with them?
Yep,
They
they
sign?
just need to sign.
Ask you mine.
Yes, I can ask, does anyone want to make a motion that we go into executive session for purposes of negotiating with our friend Sandy?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Who said that?
Chelsea?
Leanne.
Leanne, sorry. And
Whatever my name is.
I think,
vote by,
I don't think we have to now that Lisa's off the
Right.
phone.
okay. Everyone in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so we made a motion to exit executive session at 10:53 with no motions pending.
And to instruct the
We
superintendent.
directed the superintendent to,
Act as per executive session around negotiation for Sandy Alexander.
that's what I wanted to say.
She's already got it.
Okay, great, thank you. Board, I sorry, I put my agenda away. Board business is what we have left, and that is the Berkshire board seat resignation. Leanne? Do you, I told you that you could do this only if you found a replacement, so how's that
I had
working?
an idea.
Okay.
I did have an idea. I do have an idea.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So are you intending to resign at our next meeting?
You tell me. I am happy to by whatever you, I definitely am, I know for my family and for what's going on that this is what I need to do, but I'm happy to do however you want me to do that. So you tell me. I'm
I think
flexible
that
on
I don't think that you should necessarily appoint anyone to fill Leanne's
Right.
position, so if you were comfortable.
Your seat is up this
Yeah.
year,
Yep.
and I think you should just ride out your seat.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're, even if you don't choose to come to the next meeting, we hope you do, but
Yep. No,
if we
I'm-
promise
I'm-
not to keep you until 11.
I'm fine
Don't
with
make
that.
any promises.
If you resign at the next meeting, then, you
Yep.
know, I already kind of asked Leanne and Lisa and Lenny to be thinking about, could they start to, you know, see if there's any interest out in the community and hopefully find a person or two who would be interested in filling out a petition and getting on the board.
Yeah. Yep.
And we can talk more about that. When's the deadline for the petitions, Morgan?
January 27th.
We cannot talk about that.
I have mine right here. Because I am rerunning for my seat.
I know.
Sorry, ladies,
It
if all
is-
goes as well as planned, you're stuck with me.
It's been an honor, and I thoroughly have learned so much. I just, when I started this, I was only working 2 days a week, 3 days max, and my career changed, my family dynamics changed. It's like I'm just at that point where even though she's old enough, she's super needy as a 13-year-old, and I'm not there. And I know these are once a month, but they end up actually being 2 or 3 times a month. And it's tough, and I know you're all doing that, so I say that delicately. I just, for my family, it feels like 5 years has been a good run, and I feel like I've been through kind of a real important time with the board, and privileged to go through that. It was a lot more than nothing really goes on, so I do feel like we're even, Lynn.
Okay, touche. I just want to say that I have had the unique perspective of being your principal and now your superintendent, and I so appreciate your efforts. Leanne super reluctantly agreed to run for a board seat, and I totally twisted her arm. So maybe you were getting even with me when you stole that staff member years ago. Who knows? But I just want to thank you for what you've done. Like, you've worked really hard to represent not just the students in the community of Berkshire, but you've also been a champion of us looking at this newly merged district as a lens, the necessary lens of our students. And I appreciate your ability to do that early on and help us navigate and bridge this process. It's been important work, and thank you for doing it with us.
Thank you.
Sorry. It is, okay, I would add to what Lynn said, but really at the end of the day, I'm just really grateful for the time that, that I got to know you, and that the time that you spent on this board. I know your community appreciates that, and I think we're all really grateful for the time that you spent helping us get through Act 46. I think that was so really terribly important, and so we're sad to lose you, but thank you for getting us to where we are now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll see you one more time. Maybe. Maybe.
Sheldon Town
Do you
meeting?
mean the meeting? Yes. Julie, I'll come.
Okay.
I'll take you.
For you.
I'll come to Sheldon Town meeting. It'll be better than
That's it.
It is
Easier to
fun,
go
tell
on.
me.
Any future agenda items? We're meeting again here on February 5th. I think that's the end. Who wants to make a motion to adjourn?
I do.
All of us.
Finally, my turn.
Can you put that in the notes?
10:59. It's 10:59.
Yeah, we did.
Thank
We
you.
made it.
We read
Every member
right before 11.
makes the motion.
Everyone.